Fiscal year council budget. This is our process is to work with our Budget and Effective Governance Committee to get things on the table, but to act as the budget as a collective committee of a whole, so that when we go, as we go forward, we've had examination and review by a smaller group on our committee, but at the same time, everyone's aware of what's going to be coming forward. The whole idea around these workshops is that there are no surprises. Now, that's not to say things don't happen that are surprising, but there are things like no surprises unless the legislature does something and at the last minute that we have to react to. So our goal is always to be open and give the manager guidance and feedback on what this year's budget ought to look like. I would say that we all know that a budget often grows incrementally with the number of people that we hire. I think, what are we at, 8,000 now, Mr. Jones? 8,200 people that serve the citizens of this community. We've got a lot to look at in terms of how we grow that, but what else do we want to do? So today's agenda, you have the notebook, and for the newer council members, this book will be updated for every one of these workshops that you'll get an additional amount of information from the staff, and the staff is always ready to help us understand things in a very detailed way that makes it easy for all of us to work together. So Mr. Jones is going to start us off, but we've got a couple of things. Charlotte Emergency Management, the overview of our art support. On this one, I think this is something that many of us are very aware of, but I would hope that today's meeting on art support will actually give us a sense of where we as a city will participate and what principles by which we would give to the manager to do that. Our financial partners applications are fairly routine at this point, but I think we've got enough new council members. Existing capital project updates and street lighting. Intriguing agenda item, intriguing agenda list today. So we've got, I know I just saw Mr. Bakari. We're missing a few other people coming in. Mr. Jones.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. So, Mayor, you've taken every highlight that I could possibly provide.
Oh, my gosh. I don't know. It might be that old budget director in me.
So it's
very old. Very, very old.
So one of the things that I'd like to add, that's the workshops are very important to us. But if we go back to the retreat or the annual strategy meeting, for the most part, when Ryan gave you an update, he basically said, in terms of providing the same level of programs and services in FY21 as we did in FY20, we felt very good at where we are in terms of the budget. Whatever the small gap was at that time, and I know small is relative, we believe that we could solve that within our existing resources. Sometimes we get a little concerned at the workshops because that's when new items may come in, and those new items will have to be balanced with some of the priorities that the council has provided for us during the annual strategy meeting, as well as the resources that we have. So one of the reasons that we have the arts support pulled out today, and typically we have financial partners as one of the last presentations during the series of budget workshops, but we do have a large request from the Arts and Science Council. And so we wanted to have that discussion much earlier in the process than we typically do. So with that said, we do have Chief Johnson, who will start off to talk a bit about Charlotte Mecklenburg Emergency Management. And I would like to frame this a little bit, and Council Member Graham had asked on a couple of occasions about how the city is prepared in terms of emergency management. And when I start to think about emergency management, while we have the office of the Charlotte Mecklenburg Emergency Management Office, we have a number of events that require police, require fire, require CDOT, and so we work very good as a team. Today we're going to specifically talk about emergency management and to address some of the concerns that were raised during the retreat. So with that said, I'll turn it over to Chief Johnson.
Hey, good afternoon, Mayor and Council. We are glad to be able to sit here and talk to you a little bit about Charlotte Mecklenburg Emergency Management Office. It is just one leg of public safety here in the city. Chief Winkles is going to hand out the annual report for the Emergency Management Office. I'm going to talk a little bit about the purpose of the Emergency Management Office. We are here to assist the city, the county, and the towns through the mitigation, preparation, response, and recovery process. That's before, during, and after any type of emergency, whether it's a natural emergency or human-made emergency, and that varies greatly in today's society what those two things look like. But we don't do it alone, so we don't operate in a silo, we don't operate in a vacuum. We actually communicate, coordinate resources, city, department resources, county resources, as well as resources through the town. So our job is to do just that, make sure that we coordinate everyone. I'm going to introduce to you the Deputy Director for Emergency Management, which is Chief White Graham. And I'll use one of his terms before he gets up here, and I'll steal it from him early, is that everybody should be considered an emergency manager. That's why we talk about operating as a group and just coordinating resources. So, Chief Graham.
Good morning, Council, or good afternoon, Council. I'm going to steal something from Chief Johnson. So Chief Johnson always says that emergency management is the fourth leg of the public safety organization here in the city of Charlotte. But before we get started, it is important to remember that the city of Charlotte is responsible for emergency management for all of Mecklenburg County. So in addition to just the city of Charlotte, we have 8 governments that we report to, also municipalities and also the county government. In your annual report, you also see memo at a glance. So a lot of times we're involved in incidents and events throughout Mecklenburg County. Last year, we deployed our Mobile Operations Center 48 times. There are 16 support functions, and we'll talk about those in a minute. And we opened 12 shelters within the county. Today, as you're well aware, if you walked in, it's raining very hard. So our sheltering task force is actually meeting at this moment to discuss locations for any shelters as we might need, and our public messaging is out there. We're coordinating with the National Weather Service and also Duke Energy. Last year, we dealt with 17 large-scale events. With Major League Soccer coming, that will be an additional 16, I believe. And then also with the concerts planned at Bank of America Stadium, as Mr. Tepper has indicated, he will be moving forward with additional concerts. So those are also events that we'll be working with. Our Web EOC, there's 2 Web EOCs. That's how we keep track of everything in not only our county, but the 10-county region. It's also how we communicate with the state and the State Emergency Operations Center in Raleigh. There are over 800 users on that system and served over 100 organizations. So as we go through this, it's important to remember that emergency management talks to everybody all the time. And so our phones ring nonstop, pretty much 24 hours a day, as we have our partners call to ask questions and we work with them. We're also responsible for public warning and mass notification. We do that utilizing our Everbridge system and also Charmec Alerts, which is the opt-in portion of the Everbridge system. And you may know it as IPAWS, which is the Integrated Public Alert Warning System. We also maintain the warning point for the county at Fire Communications, which is the national warning system for Mecklenburg County. This is a good indicator of the different municipalities in the county that we serve. Response. So we're responsible for coordinating, we're not in charge unless it's a nuclear incident, but we're responsible for coordinating all of our resources all the time. So we make sure that CMPD talks to the fire department, talks to medic, talks to Red Cross, talks to Duke Energy, talks to the National Guard, the state, et cetera. So we're always on the phone, and when we need to, we open the Emergency Operations Center for Mecklenburg County to coordinate those resources. We monitor a number of things. If there's a Verizon outage in the Charlotte area in North Carolina like there was last week, we're monitoring it to see if that leads to other cyber issues within the state or if that's a trend. Today, we're also monitoring the coronavirus, as you were aware of in the news. So we're talking to the health department, the hospitals, the airports, et cetera. Large planned events. So when are we involved? Anytime there's over 20,000 of our residents in one location, emergency management is involved in the planning and coordination of the event along with our partners, and we're also on scene. If you watched the Panthers this year and you saw some of the evacuations that went on, that's emergency management talking to our contractor meteorologists, but also the National Weather Service, and then coordinating with the Panther staff inside, which is retired Deputy Chief Eddie Levins from CMPD. So we're all talking all the time. That decision is made to evacuate the stadium or evacuate the outside, and we want to make sure that everybody in the area is aware of the evacuation order and the plan. We're always concerned, in addition to just the emergency management function, you may call it Homeland Security, it's really the same thing. High-profile sporting events, large festivals, presidential visits, and candidate visits at the request of the U.S. Secret Service. So our federal partners that we routinely interact with almost on a daily basis include CISA, which is the new Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Agency, DHS, U.S. Secret Service, FBI, et cetera. So we're working with all of them. So this is kind of in a nutshell what we do on a day-to-day basis. And like I said, there's always somebody on call, but we work a lot of hours on our phones, and our phones ring all the time. Coordination, communications, and then connecting the resources. When Mecklenburg County cannot handle something internally, that's when we turn to the emergency order, and then we reach into our emergency operations plan, which you adopted back in September. The resources that come to Mecklenburg County from outside the county, either through the state or federally, are at the request of Charlotte-Mecklenburg Emergency Management through the WebEOC, and then the state approves it, and they send those resources to us. Task forces. So we have a number of task forces that meet either monthly or quarterly. Those include our sheltering task force, which you as a council are involved with our homeless sheltering, also our affordable housing. We worry about those types of things in emergency management. We also worry about financial literacy for our populace, because we know that folks that have money are going to do better in a disaster or a major emergency. We also know that if you have a higher credit score, you're going to recover faster from a major emergency or disaster in Mecklenburg County. Our Active Violence Task Force, this is a group that we just started, and Victoria Johnson and Angela Charles are part of that task force. So we're looking at not only in Charlotte, but Mecklenburg County, all our other towns, getting a group of folks together so we have one message, one training platform, and we're moving forward on that. So if you take the UNC Charlotte shootings, we were out there for 28 hours following the actual incident, involved with UNC Charlotte Emergency Management, the governor, the state of North Carolina, et cetera. Cybersecurity Task Force is a very important part of, it's a new task force in emergency management, but again, it's getting all the right players together to look at how we can prevent, mitigate, respond, and recover from a cyber attack, not only on the city of Charlotte, but our small and medium businesses. Bank of America is part of the task force, Wells Fargo is part of the task force, CISA, et cetera. So we're getting all the right people together and then getting them talking. We have great resources here in the city of Charlotte, but our other smaller municipalities would also benefit from those resources. If you take Atlanta, New Orleans, Baltimore have all been hit by major cyber attacks in the last couple of years. McGuire Nuclear Task Force, we meet monthly. There's about 100 folks that are involved in that task force, and that is very important because every 2 years we are graded by FEMA. Emergency management, and then our other 5 counties involved in that task force are responsible for what they call all off-site emergencies related to McGuire Nuclear Power Plant and Catawba Nuclear Power Plant down to the south. Major products, as you're aware, the Emergency Operations Plan, which was approved last year, that was presented to all 8 governments, and I'm very happy to say that not one person voted against it out of those 8 governments, and we have the signatures on that document are from all 7 mayors and the chairman of the county commissioners. It makes it a very airtight document in our plan for Mecklenburg County. Continuity of operations plans. So there's two types here in the city, as you may or may not know. One, that they're looking at the I&T portion of it, but also all of our departments have continuity of operations plans along with the county. And so if you think about it, if you can't come to this building tomorrow, how does our government continue to run? Hazard mitigation, we were talking about hazard mitigation earlier. We are one of the top counties in the U.S. for hazard mitigation. The FINS process, which is how we look at our rain gauges, the cameras that are associated with that, that is a national best standard and was adopted by the state of North Carolina. They call it FIMAN. We recently received a phone call from Houston, and they wanted to know what we were doing right here in Mecklenburg County. We had a very good conversation with them. Our threat and hazard identification and risk analysis is done every 3 years for FEMA, and then that looks at what are we going to do with grant funds, because there's a number of grants that we get in emergency management. How can we better our community and make sure we're resilient? Our stakeholder preparedness report is done every year for the city of Charlotte, Mecklenburg County. Uptown evacuation plan. If you've driven uptown, you know we have a lot of roads closed, right? So in 2013 was the last time that was done, and we're going to update it this fall. Dam plans and then nuclear plans. Specialty programs. Our All Hazard Incident Management Team is a new program created 3 years ago. It involves Charlotte Mecklenburg Police Department, Charlotte Fire Department, Charlotte Water. We just brought on Parks and Rec, Huntersville Police Department, and we have some of our airport emergency management is also on that team. Regional response hazmat teams, not only do we respond here in Charlotte, we use them locally, but they respond across a seven county region in North Carolina. It can be called anywhere during a major disaster. Our swift water rescue teams, if you've seen them down at the hurricanes, they're used here locally, but they're also used across the state. And then our urban search and rescue team, which we're exceptionally proud of, that routinely assists the state of North Carolina and is also used locally. Our Helo aquatic rescue teams, if you see helicopters making rescues in Linville Gorge, there's a really good chance those are Charlotte firefighters that are dropping out of those helicopters to make the rescues. And then our state medical assistance teams. So the field of emergency management is evolving. Technological hazards, including cyber, continue to become an issue for our communities, and we have to figure out how to deal with those locally. If you think about the federal government, they have a lot of resources. They're putting out a lot of documents and are saying these are all the issues that we have identified. The states are beginning to address those, but then how does that translate to the local level? How does that translate to Charlotte and Mecklenburg County? Climate-related events and emergency management. Climate change is an accepted thing. So we don't look at it and say, oh, the climate's not changing. No, it changed, and now we have to deal with it. So how does that impact our citizens of Charlotte? Active violence, of course, electronic platforms. So we have a number of programs that we use, including GIS, looking at data mining, looking at Twitter. We want to make sure that as people put things out there, we're tracking so that we have better understanding of what's happening in Mecklenburg County and get real-time information so that we can respond and address major emergencies. Pandemics. Flu's bad. If you didn't get your flu shot, Fire Chief and I will talk to you after this, but get your flu shot. But we also worry about the coronavirus or anything else related to those things. We're always tracking all that every day, all the time. And then public education and volunteer organizations. How do we get our public involved in the emergency management process, and how do we make sure that that resource is tapped for when we need it? So we want to do that before we have a major emergency or disaster so that we have those organizations identified, and then we can get those folks to help us respond and recover to the major emergency or disaster. This is an example of the 16 ESFs, what they call emergency support functions. There are 32 core capabilities that FEMA identifies that we need to address. We address those utilizing the emergency support functions, 16 of them here in Mecklenburg County. I'm not going to go through all of them, but everybody is involved. The Emergency Operations Center, think about the EOC as a consolidation of government. And so everybody in this room makes a lot of phone calls, text messages, emails, et cetera. And sometimes you say, we just need to meet. And that's what we're doing here. So we get everybody in the same room so you can turn around, have a conversation, fix things when you key decision makers in the room to address the issues right away. And then there's a planning component of that. It's very organized. Emergency management serves as the coach for that emergency operations center, making sure that we're moving through the disaster. So we talked about the 32 core capabilities. They translate into the emergency support functions. And for our elected officials, and like Mr. Jones, our managers, we report out on those utilizing the community lifelines. It's a new process, but it's also very easy to understand. These are the 7 community lifelines that we look at. They can be green, which is awesome. They can be yellow, which is not great. They can be red, which means we're in trouble and we need to address that lifeline. Or they can be gray, which means we're not sure whether they're good or not. So if you get a briefing from us during a major emergency or disaster, we're going to be talking about community lifelines. Recent Emergency Operations Center activations include hurricane exercise in 2018, which was a great exercise. Mr. Jones actually ordered it. He said, look, you got to do this. And I hadn't been in this office very long. I was like, oh, here we go. So we did it. And on Monday or on Sunday night, the state of North Carolina asked us if we could shelter 35,000 people for Hurricane Florence. So Mr. Jones came in there and we had a meeting. We said, we need to open our EOC. So we literally walked into the EOC and said, this is activation order. We are now actually real-time activated, and we activated for 7 days prior to Hurricane Florence. Hurricane Michael, as you may remember, we actually had more damage than Hurricane Michael as a community, but it came through very rapidly. So it was over in 4 hours. So it was one of those that hit like 11 o'clock in the morning. And by 6 o'clock, I was at home watching the news, but we were able to handle a lot of things in a very short amount of time. McGuire nuclear table exercises. The nuclear exercises are very, very serious. There's a lot of time that goes into making sure that we're ready as a community. And if you'd like to come down and actually see how one goes, it's a great time. I get 2 FEMA evaluators following me around for 6 hours, writing down every single thing I say. So it's a wonderful time to come down and see us under stress as we go through that. Winter Storm Diego, the statewide hurricane exercise of last year, Catawba River flooding, if you remember June 2019, we had 101 homes damaged and 26 destroyed. That street, those couple streets are still recovering today, and we were out there yesterday making sure that they're okay and able to ride out the next couple days. McGuire nuclear exercise of this year, and then our integrated emergency management course, which Mayor Lyles actually put a request into FEMA back in 2018. They did that last week. FEMA came down, and it was a great time, and many people in this room participated in that exercise. These are pictures of our Emergency Operations Center, actually from last week. So it's great to see everybody working together and coordinating, and then also our Charlotte-Mecklenburg Incident Management Team supporting the folks that are in the EOC. All right, that's it. Turn back over to Chief Johnson.
We are now available for questions, if there are any questions.
Mr. Driggs has a question for you.
So appreciate the presentation, and I think the community will be happy to know that we have this level of readiness for all of these things that most people ordinarily don't think about. I did want to ask, since this is a budget meeting, are all of these activities contained within the CFD or CMPD budgets, or do we have a separate budget item specifically allocated to these emergency operations?
So, and Chief Graham can correct me if I'm wrong, but that falls within the Charlotte Fire Department budget. We talked about UASI, I think last budget or last business meeting, and so some of the funding does come from some of the grants as well, but we do have grants beyond UASI, but it is fall within the fire department budget.
So the city doesn't have separate line items specifically that are not included within the fire department for emergency operations?
So in 2001, the city signed an intergovernmental agreement to take over emergency management for the county. So
Right.
then that fell underneath the fire department.
Right. The other question I had was the JCC. Where do we stand with that?
That's a little bit beyond emergency
I
management
think
scope.
I'm aiming that
so-
one more at the manager.
Okay.
Thank you. Thanks, Reggie.
Okay. Thanks, Chief. So, Mr. Driggs, the first thing I'd like to say that in terms of some of the line items in the budget as it relates to emergency operations, and I should have started with this, while we don't do, let's say, line items in these workshops, we have realized that emergency management and their operations. You'll actually see it in the book that was handed out. When we start to view the number of personnel versus the population, we understand that there's something we need to do in the 2021 budget, and we've already talked to both chiefs about that. In terms of the JCC, we are in a position now to add that to a future fire station, a future police station, or any other building that we may own. And we believe that we can save considerable funds by doing that. So we've abandoned the site where we were. The concept will be, well, Marcus, how much did you put into it that you will never get back? So we'll make sure we have that number for you, but we are convinced that we can not only stay within the budget that has already been allocated, but we can save tremendous funds by building it onto a future building.
And any discussion about the adequacy of our funding for emergency operations would be part of a later conversation about the emergency services, public safety budgets?
Yes.
All right, thank you.
All right, Mr. Graham?
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Thank you very much, Mr. Johnson, Mr. Graham, for the presentation. I think it's a really important topic that we ought to really begin to kind of hone on as we begin to move forward towards the concert season this year, the RNC, and certainly 2021. Councilmember Driggs asked two of my questions, so we're thinking along the same lines. But I'm going to ask you a question. I think I already know the answer to that. But for large-scale events, Panthers game, future soccer games, who pays that bill for security and police and fire? Mr. Manager?
Chief, do you want to talk about inside versus outside first before?
Yeah, we could talk about that, and I don't want to speak for CMPD because I wouldn't necessarily know their particular payment, but we have members of the department that actually work inside the stadium that is actually paid for by the Panthers. Everything we do on the outside is really consequence management and just being prepared for that rainy day or that event that occurs, and that overtime does fall within the Charlotte Fire Department, but if Mr. Bergman wants to elaborate, that's fine.
As far as Bank of America Stadium, the current agreement is we get $250,000 from tourism funds to help support CMPD as far as game day operations.
So that would,
And anything beyond that would be on the city.
and that would be the same for any future MLS games, soccer matches as well? Or that's something to be negotiated?
That would be negotiated.
Okay.
I think we talked about that at the council retreat, that there would probably be a negotiation around that subject with MLS and some other things coming up.
Second question, is there, and this is a piggyback on Councilmember Ray's question, and in case, God forbid, there's an emergency, is there a disaster relief fund in place? I mean, where do we go if something happens, we have to pull resources for an emergency? Is that from reserves for the city, or?
It would be a reserve, but a lot of, and it depends on whether, like, the immediate relief is with the American Red Cross. If it were something that were longer term, we have stepped up and either appropriated from reserves or, and I think basically just spent the money and seeing if we have to come back and do more. But I'm assuming.
As far as reserves, that's one of the reasons that we keep double the state-required general fund reserves. So it would come from reserves initially, and then it would be a question of federal reimbursement depending on the event.
And my last question, resolving large-scale events in preparation for the RNC, will there be any type of drills prior to August or that you did prior in terms of preparedness?
Yes, so the Integrated Emergency Management course that Chief Graham talked about was one of those preparations. We've done a number of drills within the fire department as well as with CMPD, and we have a number of events coming up, including some tabletops and some exercises over the summer to prepare everyone for that.
Okay. And lastly, Madam Mayor and Mr. Manager, just like Councilmember Driggs, hopefully as we get deeper into the budget cycle, we can actually again kind of talk about the budget for police and fire, but also that margin for emergency management preparedness as well. I just want to make sure that the budget is keeping up with the growth of the activities of the city and the departments, and I just don't want to get that lost in the shuffle in terms of new police officers and equipment that we don't really focus in on, making sure that we have the margin in our budget that takes into consideration the increased activities that we'll be taking over the next year and a half.
We'll do, as a matter of fact, and even beyond just police and fire, there are issues around transportation, so all of the department heads, we're working with them at that level.
All right, Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Chief, right around, I think it was maybe 2 winters ago when we really had a bad cold snap and had to really scramble to open some shelters, there were a number of churches who mentioned that they would like to participate and help, and it was sort of outside of the overall emergency management system. And so a group came together, and I think it was with Rich Granger right before he retired when he was in charge of emergency operations. And they came together to form sort of a network to be able to have these churches and other groups jump in there to help. What's become of that? Is that group still together, and does somebody run that?
I'd have to.
So if we're talking about the same group, I believe that's Rob Kelly and his 4CLT, and they have just been tremendous whenever there's a crisis, that they actually reach out to us before we even reach out to them.
Great, okay. And is that a group that could be mobilized for other kinds of emergency situations?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Bakari?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This probably has some touch points to emergency operations, but probably more so to just broader operations and budget of fire. On several ride-alongs in the last year with fire, I noticed a disconnect between, the trade that was made many years ago where medic went to the county and fire went to the city. And the disconnect kind of, they do a lot of, emergency health response calls, fire and medic at the same time, and they get there at different times. And I'm just curious, do you guys, either manager or chief, kind of, what do you see as it relates to from a budgetary perspective? Because they're kind of like making decisions on, is medic going to take this call or is fire going to continue on? And I feel like, at least, and this is only anecdotal, right, because I've only seen it several times, not hundreds of times. I feel like there is budget inefficiencies because they roll up into two separate entities and budgets, and maybe they have protocols in place making decisions based on what's optimal for the budgets rather than what's optimal for Charlotte and medic and emergency response holistically. So, any comments on that?
So I'll start off, Councilmember Bakari. So I think what you're talking about are medic holes, and there was a process that started before Chief Johnson, and I believe that they're trying to work through that, and hopefully that addresses your question.
Well, yeah, I think that would probably go a long way because it was the holds in the decision making. I guess just at a more macro level, as we think about our touch points with the county and the way things have evolved to today, some things logically, some things just like deal making and the way things worked out, does it make sense for fire and medic to not be under the same budget?
Can I ask another question before you start, Chief? Medic reports to a medical director. Our firefighters report to the chief. And I know that this has always been a tension, but could you address the standards and protocols for medic that are different from the protocols of fire and what the consequences of that look like?
Well, I think that's a key point there because we report to the same medical director. Mm-hmm. And so that when the medical director makes decisions, we kind of fall underneath those same directives. We do have a first responder contract with medic. And to Mr. Bakari's point, there is room for discussion there. And I know that Joe Penner and I have started those conversations about what is the appropriate funding for first responder operations. But it's a broader picture than just what Charlotte Fire Department is doing. It's actually a county discussion that needs to be had.
Just want to raise the point. Again, that's a big topic, but, just raising it.
Okay, Mr. Winston?
I think Mr. Bakar is talking about the wisdom of possibly
Start conversations, continue conversations,
yeah,
and
about
finish them.
consolidation of government and making it more efficient and effective, which is a good conversation I think we should have in general. I have a couple of questions that relate to what's current events in the news right now. It was mentioned briefly, the coronavirus. How are we preparing for this emerging threat? And what are the potential budget implications for these preparations in the upcoming fiscal year budget?
Okay, I'm going to let Chief Graham address what emergency management has worked on as far as preparation for the coronavirus. I did verify this morning that, and I assume Mr. Cagle can verify this, that Charlotte Douglas Airport is not one of the airports that are receiving people coming from the designated areas. But Chief Graham, if you want to kind of talk about what emergency management has coordinated so far.
Yes, sir. So we're working with the health department. They're actually the lead agency for Mecklenburg County on this issue, but we have a number of coordinating calls. I think they're occurring every 3 days, and we're getting daily situational updates on that. We're in the very early stages of saying, okay, right now we're just monitoring it, but there are plans in place at the state level should we have an actual larger issue, if you would, here in Mecklenburg County.
So I'm hearing that there are no potential budget implications as we think about how we might prepare for this right now.
Not right now, there's not. And so, if you think about, this, we're seeing it in the news, and it's like in China, and there's like 11 here right now. We don't know what that would look like here in Mecklenburg County, and there's no way for us to forecast if it gets out, if it becomes a bigger issue. But because we're talking about every single day, well, actually, we're getting information from the health department every day, but the health director and I have talked offline, and then we're doing our coordinating calls, but we are supporting her. It's Gibby in what she's doing. So she's the lead agency. Everybody else is supporting her, but the airport's on board. Their emergency manager is. We're all talking in the state.
Thank you.
Mr. Eggleston? I'm sorry, Ms. Ajmira had asked me next. Ms. Ajmira?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. For the Emergency Management Office, do we get any financial contribution from the county?
No, I believe that 2001 agreement, City of Charlotte took 100% responsibility for the office.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Mr. Eggleston.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Chiefs. Last year, with what we're doing with the Immigrant Community Committee, language access came up a lot. Is that something that the Emergency Management Office has been engaged with, as we expand our language access plan for the city, making sure that all of our emergency communications are available in as many different languages as possible?
Thank you for that question. We actually had Federico reach out to us for emergency management and notifications, and we're going to work with his office to make sure that we meet those needs.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions about emergency management and emergency operations? Thank you very much, Chiefs.
Thank you, Mayor Council.
Very much. Mr. Jones?
So, thank you, Mayor. So, I was just discussing with the budget director. If it's okay with the council, we would like to have financial partners first,
Okay,
and then we'll do arch support.
so I see financial partners begins on page 12. Okay.
So, Mayor, before Brian starts, one of the things that the council did last year that was very helpful is that we made sure as a staff that we were pulling in as many applications for financial partners during the December or the fall timeframe. So we consider this to be the universe, as opposed to what was happening at some of the straw votes where we would have new financial partners come in. So our strong desire is that's the same process that we would have this year, and that the individuals who have already applied become that pool in which you would fund.
So what you're saying, you had an application process with a deadline and we're sticking to it?
Yes.
Okay.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Ryan Bergman. I'm the Budget Director. Happy to be in front of you. Also happy to get away from the manager who's a little bit under the weather for a half hour and have him not breathe on me a little bit. But I have to do that because when I gave the budget report at council, I don't know if you noticed, but I had an eye infection and he made fun of me the whole time. So I had to make sure to get him back a little bit. Purpose of the presentation. So last year at this time, as I was the deputy director, I sat over there and I watched Phil do a great job. And I thought that is a lot of information. I'm very glad I don't have to do it. And here I am this year. But I mentioned that because we did take some feedback from last year. Last year at this time, or a couple months later in April, we presented the financial partners and a number of you said, we would like this information sooner. You give it to us in April, there's not enough time to get the information we want, get the feedback. And we want to make sure that we provide the information to you so that when the manager turns over the budget to you in May, you have all of your questions answered as it relates to financial partners. So I want to break down how our financial partners are paid for. Like everything I'm presenting to you, it gets a little bit complicated with the numbers and the organization, and I apologize for that, but it really breaks down into three buckets. You have the ones that you'll typically think about, which would be your general fund and your pay-go, the discretionary ones that can change year to year.
I'm sorry, it's on page 2 behind the blue page, right? I said page 12, I was just misread it. Page 2.
So beyond that, you have your federal grants. So thinking of your CDBG, out-of-school time partners, and then your home partners. And then finally, you have your dedicated revenue sources where there is a specific dedicated revenue that has to support that task. So think of your municipal service districts. A little bit about the timeline, as the manager mentioned. In October, we contacted last year's financial partners and we publicly posted the application process. These were due in December, and we did work with them throughout January to make sure that we had all of the information that we required. And so we're able to present it to you a little bit earlier, leading into the manager's recommended budget and then your suggested adjustments. I won't spend much time on this because it hasn't changed from the past, but the application requirements, we do collect all of this information. So I do want to verify that all of the organizations that submitted applications did turn in what we were required by today. So before I talk specifically about organizations, I wanted to put this out there as kind of a visual tool to understand the total scope of our financial partner funding. So I have it broken down into these buckets. I don't have the dedicated revenues in here. I will talk about them later, but I do want to treat them differently. But this is our general fund, our pay-go, and our CDBG funding for FY20. So this isn't the request, this is where they're currently funded at. So moving on to general fund and pay-go discretionary, this is the universe here. So now in this table, we have the FY20 funding amount and we have the FY21 funding request. Of the organizations that we funded last year, Tree Charlotte was the only one that did not submit an application. We did contact them and verify, and it's because they had current year program funds left over, and so they decided not to submit an application, but we did follow up with them. Everybody else did submit an application. As the manager mentioned, because of the uniqueness of Arts and Science Council's request this year, we did pull it out, so I won't talk about that here. But if they're excluded from this, you see a universe of about $1.2 million of requests compared to about $800,000 of what was funded in FY20. So you'll see this slide twice, so I won't talk about it here for Arts and Science, but I did want to use it as the opportunity to, one of the other feedback items we got from last year's presentation is a lot of the questions were about the recent history of funding, what they were asking for and what we gave them. So each of the slides will have that, the actual request, and then the approved amount that year. So moving on to the other discretionary ones. The first one is the Charlotte Regional Business Alliance. And I won't go through these reading the mission statement or anything. I'll just provide a little extra context. This has been a partner for 10 years. All of the funds that the city provides are used for marketing. They're used for marketing throughout the world. And their request that they're asking over FY20 levels is only a per capita increase, because that's how they base their request. So that's just based on population growth. Moving on to the Community Building Initiative, they have not requested additional funding. They've been I should rephrase that, they haven't requested any funding beyond what they received in FY20. They are a 14-year financial partner. Probably shouldn't do this because it seems impartial, but I am a member of one of their programs, and as someone who's come from Michigan and is learning Charlotte in the Leaders Under 40 program, it's been a great opportunity for me to learn about the city and its history.
We're going to go through and then come back, okay? Let's get you through the list.
Okay. Safe Alliance is a 40-year financial partner with us. They're asking for a slight $15,000 increase, and their increase is primarily to support additional resources for an attorney position that can speak both English and Spanish. And as always, they are working with victims of domestic violence and sexual assault. The Women's Business Center has requested $49,000 over last year. This is one that was added during budget adjustments last year in FY20, which is what the table represents. So this would be additional funding for more lunch and learn seminars, and then also software that they describe in the packet. YMCA, My Brother's Keeper, has been a partner for the last couple of years. They're requesting $100,000 this year. Representative from the office did get some additional context speaking to the director yesterday. They're looking for funding to serve additional boys. The money is, if funded, the $100,000 would be used primarily for operating, with some for personnel. And so those are all of the ones that were existing. And then so the next few are new requests. So the first one is the Farmers Market Management Services. This is a new request for $118,000. They're looking to support expansion of local food systems in the farmers market. The agency was established in 2018, so it is fairly new. The city funding would be about 75% of the agency's budget in FY21. So it is an agency that's it's not very big yet, but it's trying to expand. The next new request is from Heal Charlotte. This request would represent, if funded, about 45% of the agency's budget. They would primarily use these funds for personnel, and this is an agency that was established in 2017, so it's fairly new as well. But so this is an area that's specific to a location in the city in North Charlotte, so it's a little bit different. And then finally, Samaritan's Feet, they're requesting $100,000. So this is primarily to give shoes and socks to disadvantaged children. It's currently a $3 million organization, and they're requesting $100,000. The organization's been around for about 17 years. And the funds would primarily be used for, as you'd expect, the operating costs, such as shoes.
Okay, so before we go to the federal grant funds, would you rather take questions of those that are immediate and then come back? Okay, so Mr. Bakari?
Thank you. I'll obviously pause the ASC conversation because we're going to come back to that. So the Charlotte Regional Business Alliance, a lot has changed over the last year or two in this topic. And I think as we've been able to work more closely with Janet and the new kind of administration there, I think we can expect big things from them, and it's an exciting partnership. But I think we also need to recognize that the model and the relationship has changed. So I'm wondering if you guys can maybe take away, and that's why I think it's beneficial going through the partner request up front, so then we have time to kind of have follow-ups and discussions later. Can you go through and really break us down an analysis of, okay, this was the regional partnerships portion of the old money, this was the cities, but also given the fact that now a big chunk of what I'm imagining, we used to pay the legacy chamber to literally be just Charlotte and Charlotte Alone's recruitment and kind of marketing function, has now become, one, something bigger, right? So we are less of the focal point of the money we would put in there. And two, if memory serves correctly, the two largest investors in that legacy world was the city of Charlotte and the county, which both, I think, gave, in the old model, around the same amount of money. So it almost then, as a second point, says, is the city of Charlotte almost double paying for our portion of the coverage? So I'm not saying that relationship isn't valuable. In fact, I think it's going to be very valuable, but I think it is very different than what it was 2+ years ago. And I think we owe it to go into that, both breaking out the money and then understanding what that money's going to compared to what it used to. So does that make sense, Mr. Manager?
Yes, we can do that.
Okay, Mr. Eggleston?
Just two specific questions. One, I see the note that Tree Charlotte did not submit a request. Did someone, and if you said this, I apologize, I didn't hear it. Did someone reach out to them and inquire why they didn't?
Yes, they verified it was intentional because of the existing funds they have.
Oh, okay, in reserve. Sorry if I missed that. And then also I saw Mr. Warshauer walk in. I just wanted to make sure that I'm excited to see this farmers market management services thing in here. Is this something that was born out of the report and if you're going to respond more than just a yes or no, you'll have to come up to the mic, but was this one of the recommendations from the report that you presented to us last year? Or is this independent of that?
Kind of, it's an agency that wants to be involved in that space with one of the recommendations.
Got to go to Mike. Sorry to make you move, but well, I just want to make sure. I mean, I think the report that you presented to us last year, I thought was very compelling, and I want us to find ways. I know the county recently has started talking, not for the first time ever, but has really started talking more about food deserts, and I think that there's a role for the county to play and a role for the city to play in addressing food deserts. I think the report that you presented to us was compelling in certain ways that the city could make an impact in that space. And I want to make sure that if we're funding something here as one of our funding partners, that we're doing it in a way that aligns with all of the research that you helped get done for us.
So their interest in, how do I say this? Identify myself. I'm Tom Warshauer with the City of Charlotte, Housing and Neighborhood Services. These were people that were involved in creating that study, or some of the consultants that were involved in the study, and they've been very interested in activating one of the recommendations in the report around a farmers market association. So they have applied, sort of trying to activate, wanting to activate that recommendation in the report.
So this could be viewed as an outcome from that work that was done.
Certainly, yes. There's definitely, they read the report, they want to be involved in it.
Really get you further with what you presented to us with regard to food deserts.
Yes, it could. Right.
It could. Is there, are we missing something here that, I mean, I think if we all feel like this is helping, because I think there's always been an issue with the farmer's market as to where it's located, and therefore it doesn't address food deserts.
Well, this is broader than just the regional or the state market.
It is regional.
Yeah.
And that's what I wanted to know is, does this address the
So
issue?
this group is led by Lynn Caldwell, and they're very interested, and she's been very involved in a lot of farmers markets. She formed the Atherton Market years ago, and she has a consulting business, or has had a consulting business that works with people in the food space, both farmers and people who are food entrepreneurs. And so this is an area where she's very interested in becoming more involved in helping all the markets in our community be better marketed throughout Charlotte and Mecklenburg County. She's just formed her board. There's no real track record for this, and there are not a lot of partners that are on board this yet. But this is her and her board's goal is to activate that recommendation and to do that work. And she's highly qualified, and a number of the people are highly qualified that she has brought on into that space.
Okay, thank you.
So I have one other question about the farmers market management services. I've actually had a visit from a group that plans on locating a farmers market in Center City. And I don't think they're a part of this group, and they didn't make a request, but I just wondered if you know that there's more planning for a farmers market in Center City.
Yes, I talked with Jan
Yeah.
with some length when she was first beginning her journey in exploring the farmers market in the Center City. So there are a number of markets that are getting going all over Charlotte, and people that are interested in markets. What this organization would do would be to work with all of those, because none of them really have any money for marketing. Maybe Jan and the Uptown Farmers Market, because they're related to this, could connect with the Center City and have marketing money. But none of the others really have any money to do the kind of marketing promotion that's really needed. And that's what Lynn would seek to do through her market association, is to work with all of the market managers to help promote all of the markets as a system, rather than a market individually.
And this would be for-profit and nonprofit markets? Or I think
Well,
we need more,
yeah.
don't worry about the question
I don't
so
know
much.
that.
Is I think that with the startup, we need more of an idea about what they do and what their vision is. And so I think this mission statement is great, but we really need to understand this request, who it works with, what it would do, what are the real actionable items that the funding would go toward, and how many markets have actually said we want to be a part of it.
Right.
So that we just need some information.
Correct.
And
This is on
on the
farmers
market,
Yeah.
Mr. Driggs, and then you can go ahead.
Could we get all the materials that we considered last time so that we can, as quickly as possible, get back to where we were the last time we had this conversation? There was a PowerPoint presentation, there was some discussion, and I just wouldn't want for us to repeat the entire conversation if we can help it. So any notes from those meetings, the discussions that took place, the PowerPoint, if we could just get that out to everybody, and we'll be better prepared the next time this comes up.
We can do that.
I do want to reiterate that the questions were not a lack of enthusiasm. I think it's great. I just want to make sure that it's married to what we've been talking about.
Right, and I want to establish that we covered a lot of this ground is my point, so I just don't want to kind of start from scratch.
All right, Mr. Driggs, you also had another question. Thank you, Mr. Washington.
Yeah, on CRBA, I had a similar concern to Mr. Bakari's about the kind of incremental nature.
You said, Charlotte,
Oh.
the Alliance. You said CRVA.
BA, yeah.
BA.
The Alliance, right. And so I guess my comment is similar. I regard that as a rapidly evolving situation, and I would like to see some evidence of what other localities are doing to fund it, and how our participation in that is evolving along with our investment in economic development to reflect the new nature of our relationship with them. And again, particularly on the issue of how it's being funded and what contributions are coming from the other communities. I did have, can I go ahead, Chief?
Please, go ahead.
These new applications, the 3 new applications, they have all been vetted in terms of their compliance with all of our requirements and so on. So these are eligible beneficiaries, right?
Correct.
But the staff is not making any recommendations one way or another, and these are the only ones we received that were eligible, that we're being asked to consider. Okay, then, yeah, I'll save the other question till later. Thank you.
All right. Mayor Pro Tem, did you have another question?
I do, yeah, that hit most of mine. One additional question I have is, with Safe Alliance, the increase you said was for, wasn't what I thought it was for, I'll just say. I understood that with their move to a different space, to sort of the temporary co-locating space, that we were going to be asked for money for rent for CMPD. So is that still coming, or is that under a different bucket, in a different bucket?
So the reason for the increase is pulled from their application, so we'll seek out clarification from them on that.
Okay, thank you.
Could I just
follow
ask
up to-
a
go
quick
ahead,
question?
Mr. Driggs.
You say it's an increase. I see 445 and 413. So how's that an increase?
No, the top was the request last year, the bottom was what was actually approved.
397.
Oh, okay, so it's an approved,
397.
okay, over what was approved last year. Thank you.
Yep.
I just want to say, I've heard from the Mayor Pro Tem lots about Justice Center and co-location and all of that. I was wondering who else is aware of it and knows what's going on. I think we need to have a presentation on what's being requested, because the budget is one part of it. It's actually, how do you actually do this? And co-locating was not the goal, I thought. I thought the goal was collaboration.
Yes.
So I'm very concerned about how that works and what are we going for? What's the intent? Okay. Ms. Ajmira?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Can you go back to slide number 8, where you got discretionary FY20? Okay. So under Tree Charlotte, that 100,000, is that unrestricted funding, or was that unrestricted funding, 100,000 in 2020?
Yeah, so that actually came from our pay-as-you-go fund, which comes from property tax and sales tax. So yes, it was unrestricted. The only difference coming from PAYGO rather than the general fund is they'll be able to keep the money even if they don't spend it all, where in the general fund it drops to fund balance.
So I know,
I think you have a different question. That 100,000 is not for operations, it's for planting trees.
so there was two, I remember last year, there was 100,000 that was unrestricted, and there was 250,000 conditional upon tree planting on specific city-owned property. Am I correct?
That's exactly right.
So, so I was told that 250,000, have only been used, well, out of 250,000, only certain amount has been used, not all of it, so that's gonna continue. But I was told that 100,000, they're still requesting unrestricted. Is that not the case?
They're not.
No, so the 250,000 was, I believe, part of the 3-year endowment contribution that we made. Is that a different 250?
No, that's a different one.
So that came from the developer fund,
Right.
and you're exactly right. The $250,000 was to plant trees on properties owned by the city.
Yes.
And my understanding is that the ramp up for that has not been as quick as Tree Charlotte would like. So there's capacity there to do that with that first $250,000.
Got it, but this 100,000, that's unrestricted, that in FY 2020.
What?
Well, it's part of our financial partner process, so it would be, when you say unrestricted, we would have given it to them for a specific purpose, and we can get last year's application and what they said they would do with it.
I understand, but it wasn't restricted in terms of planting trees only on city-owned properties.
No, it was.
If you mean the money that comes from a fee that has to be spent,
Right.
correct, this is different from that.
This is different.
Yeah.
Okay, because I was told by Tree Charlotte that they are still requesting $100,000 of what they had received in FY 2020. But what you're saying, that they did not request the funding.
That's correct, and we did verify with them, but based on this, we will double check.
So because I just talked to them recently, so I think there is a gap there between what's been presented versus what I was told.
And we do know, we do not have an application from them, and we did check it, so if they are requesting it, they haven't submitted anything to us to do so.
Okay. To my next question, are there priorities for this request as they come in, where they had to meet certain criteria, not just, all this 501c3 or so on, but that it has to meet, whether it's environmental, housing, whether it's safety? Do we have any policy around that in place?
So part of their measures and goals are attached to priorities, if that's what you're asking.
So when they request funding, I guess it's part of the application?
Right.
Okay. And how do we measure that, is there a metrics in place in terms of how the funding was used, whether we were able to move some of our priorities forward?
So there's metrics in place that they submit, so they submit a last year actuals on their metrics that they track and a mid-year. So we do need to spend some time as an office really getting into that, since we brought the financial partners to you a little bit earlier this year. We do need time to analyze that.
Got it. So I guess we have the actuals of what was approved last year. I would like to see, based on what was approved, the metrics of the work that's been done by each one of these organizations, not just what was approved. And is there, do we have any policy in place as to what percentage of funding can be our funding versus what they have to go out and raise or get from other sources?
Out of school time does, these discretionary ones don't.
Okay, so I think that's where we had to think about this, where if there are organizations that are getting or requesting 100% of their funding from the city, maybe 80%, 70%, it may not be sustainable in the long run. So I know we have that policy for out-of-school partners, but I think we also need to have some sort of policy in place that council agrees on when it comes to what percentage could be city funding, to ensure that we are tackling multiple priorities and helping as many organizations as possible. Okay, thank you.
I don't know that we'd be able to do that this year. And what I recall is that some of these were added by council members during the budget session, so they didn't even have an application in. And so if we're going to have some requirements around that, we need to kind of define those. And I guess that would be something that a new budget policy would be prepared to address. And so at some point, we have to decide as a group if we want to do that. And I don't know that we have to do that today. Well, we aren't going to do it today. But at some point, we need to think if we're going to do that and put it in an institutional format. Ms. Watlington?
So along those lines of the policy piece, my question is regarding the applications that we received that maybe the people did not meet eligibility, because we had a discussion about safety partners yesterday and what some of the barriers may be to get funding from the city. So I just wanted to understand if you were able to tell me briefly what were the highest Pareto items for reasons why potential partners didn't make it past that point.
So, as has been done in the past, we had a deadline, and then there was some things that organizations had not submitted. We did work with them throughout the month of January to make sure that all of the materials they wanted were provided to us, so we could say that we're not excluding anybody based on them not providing us the information that we need. So if that answers your question, there's nobody that we don't have the information from.
Okay, so everybody that applied was already eligible.
Has submitted, yes, has submitted what we need from them.
But we don't have an idea of maybe who did not apply, obviously, because they knew they weren't going to be eligible. Okay.
Mayor, members of
yes.
council, also, this isn't the only pot, so there may be grassroots organizations that are applying for Jump Start grants or some of the neighborhood grants, so there are other places they may be asking for funding.
Yeah.
Okay, do you want to talk about another place, out-of-school time partners that are funded through our community development block grants?
Sure, and this year, out-of-school time partners is in the second year of a cycle. The way these work is a 2-year cycle, so we won't go through them individually since the work that council did last year really leads into the FY21 request. Here are the organizations that were funded in FY20 and FY21. I will tell you that there was one organization after submitting that decided they did not want the funding. We have the letter. It wasn't a specific reason. They just said that they decided not to do it. So for FY21, that funding wouldn't be there. So I just wanted to explain the difference between FY20 and FY21 for out-of-school time partners.
Mayor, I would like to add, and I think you brought this up last year, so this is your CDBG 15% set aside, that you have a great deal of flexibility of how you'd like to spend this. So my ask of the mayor and council is, before another 2-year cycle comes about, is out-of-school time partners your priority to spend this money, because you have a great deal of flexibility of how you can spend this 15% set aside?
I would like to refer this to budget and effectiveness after the beginning of the year, because the 15% community development is very flexible. It's the most flexible money we get from the federal government. And as you can see, the totals of it are pretty, I mean, it doesn't equate to a really good, healthy amount of money, and I think that we really ought to look and have a policy around that, because the policy has been in place since 2010, maybe, even before then. Yeah, I know when I came on council, it was in place already, and so what we do, and I think it's time to take a look at that. Mr. Bakari?
Could I make a request along that front that I think ties back into something we've been talking about, even back into the retreat, which is, I think this would make a lot of sense being referred as part of a broader referral into business development and
Workforce and Business Development?
BDW, because the main takeaway that we gave staff on this topic from the retreat was step one, big step one, hyper urgency because of the budget period. Go and inventory everything that's happening in the community around workforce, any area that touches it, and then overlay where we have financial partner relationships. So for example, I know the Greater Enrichment Program very well, served on the board of that for a couple of years. Like, that is a perfect item for us to know, map, and understand how does that fit into MyEP/Peace 2.0 next generation. So when I mentioned on Monday the urgency we have in the window that's going to close, this, in my mind, is the first step in that. And I know that Tracy has us working on the next agenda, which I hope for business development and workforce will be this topic specifically around workforce. I just think that would be a logical place for us to start, and then we would need to toss it over to budget and effectiveness once we understood the mapping. So less of the budgetary thing, more of the what strings are attached and related to workforce.
Okay. Well, I think we know that this time period is ending, and so we've got to have something in place after this budget's adopted. So we have some time, and I hear both requests. Okay, the next one,
Oh, still.
I'm sorry.
So
Is
the,
there anything else that you wanted to say about the block grant ones, since they're kind of agreed upon? Anything else from the community development block grants? Okay, thank you.
Okay. And then moving on, these are out-of-school time partners, but they are financial partners. They're treated a little bit differently because these are through the home grant. It's from through CDBG, but not the public service portion. It's also through our innovative housing in the case of crisis assistance ministry. So they do submit the same application materials, but it's just handled a little bit differently through our housing programs.
Okay, any questions about that? Okay, the next thing that we have are, I'm sorry, I did not see.
So could you, just a second. So for the CDBG, home and HOPWA, are those restricted to only housing work? Could you elaborate on each one? So CDBG, home and HOPWA grants that we receive from federal agencies, are those can they only be used for housing?
So I mean, like, for instance, crisis assistance is funded through our housing funds in innovative housing, so that's of course used for housing because that's what we ask. As for the home and the CDBG grants, we're serving a specific purpose of what CDBG wants, which in this case is housing. And if you're asking, could that be used for something else, I think we'd have to do some research on that. But that's more in housing shop.
I'm trying to understand what each one of these grants can be used for.
If you don't mind, I'll ask Pamela to come up.
Yes, please. Because there are restrictions around community development funds from the federal government that are directed, but there are ways to use it multiple ways.
No, I'm just trying to understand if any of this funding could be used for other requests that are coming in.
Good afternoon, Council Mayor and Council. Pamela Whiteman with the City's Housing and Neighborhood Services Department. As far as your CDBG, it has to be used for low to moderate households earning 80% and below. It has to be used for housing services, and it can be used for public services activities like out-of-school time partners. So you are currently using it as it is prescribed. For your HOPWA, that's housing for persons with AIDS and HIV, it has to be used for housing activities for those populations. And then your home funding, again, it is to be used for households earning 80% and below, and there are specific housing activities that it has to be used for.
Okay, thank you.
Very welcome.
Mr. Winston?
I just wonder, specifically around the funds around the housing partnership, this is, what kind of conditions are we able to put under these relationships? For instance, specifically, are we able to say, hey, we'll give you this money if you take, but you can't have, we have to remove application fees for when people are applying to affordable housing. Are we able to kind of dial in that acutely with these funds?
So, Mr. Winston, your CDBG funds are generally used for for housing. They are used for rehabilitation of existing housing units, and they are also used for new construction. And so I don't want you to confuse the housing partnerships or any other affordable developers need to do an application fee with those. I don't think you can put those restrictions on them just because they receive CDBG dollars.
So Councilmember Winston, and Ryan and Pam, correct me if I'm wrong, if anything that says PAYCO, extreme flexibility.
That's right. Your local dollars are extremely flexible.
Yeah.
Okay. But then outside of that, when you start to see CDBG, you're looking at low to moderate income areas. So I think if we can give you a breakdown of how much of this funding is related to PAYCO and how much is related to CDBG or home or the other program, I think that would be helpful.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, Ms. Ajmira?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So this was very useful, Ms. Whiteman. For the housing partnership and for the House Charlotte, those two line items at the bottom, how much of that is coming from PAYGO, each one of those?
Ms. Ajmira, I don't know that off the top of my head, but I'd be happy to put that in a follow-up to you.
Okay, so from what I understood, PAYGO could be used for other purposes. Got it, but the others are restricted based on federal guidelines. Okay.
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay. Dedicated revenue partners.
Okay, and these, there's 4 of them. They all have a funding source that is restricted to our municipal service districts. And the other is the Charlotte Regional Visitors Authority, and then a subset of that is the film portion of the Charlotte Regional Visitors Authority. The request that you'll see in all cases that have increased is based on anticipated growth in their revenue source. So like the case with Charlotte City Partners, they have a request amount, which is just a projection by them. What they actually get is the actual tax dollars as finalized.
Right.
CRVA, it's a similar setup with occupancy tax, and there is a portion of this that is required to be used on marketing, restricted for marketing, and of course they restrict it for that purpose. The film portion has not changed the request, $150,000. Trying to go a little fast through these, and then University City Partners is similar to Center City Partners. Well, it's the same thing. It's a MSD, and the money that they get is based on the actual tax value of the MSD. So that's what I have for financial partners, and I'll stop there. Otherwise, I can go straight into the arts if there's no questions.
All right, Mr. Winston?
Thank you. When will, I guess, the question is for the manager or the mayor. what would be the appropriate time to have a discussion around CRVA and the funding model and how, we interact with that group? I know that this has come up not just from myself but from other council members, and it would seem that before we make decisions on that, if there was any kind of rebalancing that we might want to consider, would be the time to do it before we vote on appropriating the money.
Sure. Councilmember Winston, typically we do bring in CRVA and Center City Partners as a part of the budget development process. And I believe that the mayor and the mayor pro tem are working on some mapping system as it relates to the boards and commissions having a relationship with the committees.
I have another question. Can you tell me how much the marketing percentage is at this point of the 17 million that they currently do? I don't know if they designated the 18 million requests.
It's 15% of one of the revenue sources, and it's 8.9 million. 8.9 million is the restricted marketing portion.
So it's about 50%.
Correct.
Am I reading it's 17 million, you said 9 million, so it's about 50%. Okay.
Yeah, the marketing piece, correct.
Okay. And there is a relationship here between this and the Charlotte Regional Alliance as well. So can you kind of help us understand how the organization works? Because CRC, Charlotte Business Alliance, does not do the marketing, and CRVA does. I know that there's for all of those things. So if you could just make sure we understand what who owns what and what funds what. Okay, any other questions on, are we going, we just have the applications and board information in detail behind here about the various organizations, and I'm sure the staff will be glad to meet with you on any one of these if you think that there's something you have more of a question around their mission or how they do their work, and those things can come back to the council in our next report. I don't know if I said that to the new council members. There will be Q&As that will be done sequentially so that you will see each workshop, the follow-up, as a result of the questions asked by council. All right, Mr. Jones, what's next?
So, Mayor, members of council, Ryan's dad is somewhere sitting on the edge of his chair, fretting over his son making a presentation about arts and culture. So
Ryan, is your dad not in like an art and cultural person?
My dad, who's visiting from Michigan, thinks it's hilarious that I'm the person that would talk about arts and culture. So I will keep this as objective and number-based. I will tell you that when I was in graduate school, I substitute taught, and I was known as the person who messed up the color wheel for fifth graders. So it's not my proudest moment. I never got to substitute teach art again. But
I do want to recognize that Chief Bryant is in the room today, and we've had some conversations about what the ASC is trying to do. I think in terms of level setting, I'm not sure that this council has ever had a presentation from me or the team related to the arts and science other than an annual increase of a couple $100,000. So we'd like a little bit of grace starting off because I believe this is something new in terms of having such a large request related to the Arts and Science Council. The last thing I'll say before I turn it over back to Ryan is there have been a series of studies. There was a 2014 study as well as a 2018 study, or a 2018 work group in which staff, Sarah Hazel was a part of that, which talked a lot about what is the what's happening right now in terms of arts and culture in our community, as well as what are some options of moving forward. So as we talk about this, I guess for the first time at this level, a lot of this is just level setting and information.
Okay, Ryan?
okay,
Let's
so
go to the color wheel now.
I had green instead of yellow for what it's worth. The purpose of the presentation, So we wanted to talk a little bit about all of the City of Charlotte's support for arts in FY20, not specifically restrict it to the Arts and Science Council and their request, but we also wanted to talk about the financial partner request, since it represents such a large percentage of the financial partners and the increase this year. We also, and I'd ask for a little bit of grace here, since the Budget and Effectiveness Committee, the Mayor Pro Tem asked some more specific questions about what are some other places doing. So we did try to rush in a benchmark analysis. I wouldn't classify this as a report. We've done it over a couple weeks only, but it does provide some information that can be helpful with context with some of our peer cities. So here's the big summary slide of our FY20 support. We have a $3.2 million support for the Arts and Science Council. We also have a public art program, and I won't talk much about this after this, but it is a 1% of construction costs that we send to the Arts and Science Council, and then they basically act as a pass-through to artists. I will tell you that Pier City, this is very common, and we are in line, so that's not anything elaborate or unusual. It also does not include arts in transit in the number, and the reason for that is because that is a federally required program, so I didn't feel it was appropriate to try to add it to that number. But the two biggest chunks there, bigger than the arts and science contribution actually, are the debt and the maintenance that we pay on the 7 cultural facilities that we own. So these are the 7 cultural facilities, and they're organized by that for a reason. We actually contract with 5 organizations. So we contract with the Mint Museum, for instance, who runs 2 of the facilities. We contract with Blumenthal, who also runs Night Theater. We charge them $1 a year to these 5 organizations. So on top of us leasing it to them for effectively free, we also take on the maintenance responsibility for these facilities. And related to that, if you take the 10 biggest program revenue generating organizations in Charlotte, biggest arts organizations, so these would be the ones that are getting revenue from actual services, from plays, or admission in Discovery Place's case, you'll see that the city is actually connected to 8 of them through these facilities. So we have the 5 that we own the facilities for, and then we also have 3 others that actually typically perform in the facilities that we own. So moving on to the, it's just a couple of slides on some of the snapshot benchmark analysis. Don't read into the number 12. That is just, we had 12 analysts. We assigned 1 each to contact, to research, to get all the information they possibly could from each. So we have the 12 biggest. If needed, we could certainly expand to the smaller 8 peer cities. But then we also did the big 5 cities in North Carolina to try to understand a couple of things about how we support the arts compared to them. So this is the other peer cities that we looked at, and it's kind of a mixed bag. We tried to figure out, are they primarily supporting arts through their general fund, or are they primarily supporting arts through a dedicated revenue source? So there are, it's the same. As far as the dedicated revenue source, you'll see 1 has a dedicated sales tax, which is Denver, which is similar to what was recently attempted. There's 2 that have an admissions tax. That would be Columbus and Seattle. And so their arts revenue is from the sale of tickets. And then there's 3 that use some kind of occupancy tax. And then also there is 1 uniquely, which is Portland, which has an arts tax, which is on the property tax bill as a block amount. As far as the general fund ones, we compare our contribution to them, and as far as the peer cities, we were 3 out of the 5 if you don't include the facility money, only the arts and science money. If you included the facility money as well as a contribution, we would be 2nd out of the 5. And of course, we're much bigger than the North Carolina cities, so we are above them as well.
Sure.
One question about these peer cities. You're telling me that we haven't really qualified in terms of, do we think they're doing it right? Are they being successful in terms of how they're supporting their arts with public funds? Are you just saying that we just chose these cities because of size? Are we?
No.
What are we? Are we saying that these cities are good to compare because? But there's no qualifying data on what their effectiveness of their investment is on the arts.
I think what he was saying was Mayor Pro Tem asked for this, and this is like a much bigger approach of benchmarking. They tried to jam a couple things together real quick for us. I don't think this is by any means a replacement for a more broad benchmark that's actually necessary.
So what good is this information?
It's not that good.
So we're trying to answer your first question, we use the 20 peer cities, which we came up with last year based on a series of quantitative data that we had metrics that we could use, and our economist came up with the 20 that clustered together based on a number of variables. And we can provide you that information. It was actually in the back of the report from Monday too, on tethering. It's the same peer cities. So in no way are we measuring in the last 2 weeks the effectiveness of the arts. We're just trying to break down the funding levels, how they fund the arts primarily, and then if they handle it internally versus externally.
Mayor Pro Tem.
I'm sorry, can I just get a clarification though, because some cities use a dedicated tax revenue, but it is their tourism tax. So we have a tourism tax, but we don't use it for the arts, right? I mean, is that a little bit confusing?
So
Portland's dedicated tax revenue comes from the tourism.
We use it for facilities, and we do for, what portion of don't we pay for some of our facilities with the occupancy tax? That was part of the Levine campus. We could not have had the Levine campus without the debt service.
Did we get that information that first or second?
But I don't want to
slide?
say something. I'm asking Kelly or the manager. I don't want to say that.
That's what I'm asking for, just a clarification.
Yeah, let's.
When we say we're not using a dedicated, or did you say we are using a dedicated?
No, what I'm saying is this is the primary source that we use to fund arts. So we have, and it's from 2006, we have sales tax money that's transferred to tourism, which then supports our facilities. So it's kind of a convoluted process, but I did not include that in this. This is just the general fund portion of that, and this is just trying to show how these cities are mainly funding arts.
Didn't you say there were 3 that use occupancy tax? I had Denver for the dedicated sales tax, Columbus and Seattle for admissions tax, Portland for the arts tax, and 3 others that do use occupancy tax.
Correct. That would be San Diego, Houston, and Austin.
Okay. Go ahead. I'm not sure I got that answer, but that's fine. Go ahead.
Mayor, members of council, before Ryan goes much further than this is just the first wave. So if the team had done a survey of 20 of our peer cities and found that 19 were doing something, then there could be a trend that we should consider. So again, this is the beginning of the discussion. There can be additional questions and data that's collected, but I hope we all agree that our peer cities are our peer cities, and that's our starting point when we do an analysis.
It is a macro kind of thing that when people look at us, do they compare us to these cities? That's basically that. Mr. Bakari.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I get where you're coming from. I totally agree. I think they're trying to help us with this, and it's a starting point, but I think no one should draw any conclusion off of this. It's merely meant to kind of point us in a rough direction. All it tells us is the peer cities are the right peer cities. I have confidence in that, but it doesn't tell us anything. So I put that aside. I think Mayor Pro Tem's earlier point weeks ago, or a couple, is really valid, which is having this in a real study, there is value for that in a benchmark, so we know what to do. But I think that's a longer term, maybe a midterm question that we have to have answered. I think right now, the questions that we need to answer over the next couple weeks, the benchmark is cool, but honestly, I don't think that matters that much to me. What I care about is we have a problem on our hands that needs to be addressed. And we know that there are various parties in town that are positioned to potentially do that. The county is one, the city is one, the private sector is one. We don't know much beyond that. We have some ideas. I think the big takeaway right now from what we've seen so far is a lot of people are probably under the impression that we spend $3.1 million in our annual budget into the Arts and Science Council and the arts community, when in fact, the first number now we've seen other than that, we spend $13 million a year. And so, yeah, exactly, plus. So I think that should be headline number one for those of us coming in here who've been asking for that number for a while. And I think takeaway number two then beyond that is, if we're going to benchmark somewhere so we can make a decision in the next month or two in our budget where we might play and what that might look like, the question is, in some of these benchmark cities, are they also spending $8+ million on maintenance and debt service on the buildings? Or is that part of those budgets that we're benchmarking for other arts organizations in those cities? Things like that. Because at the end of the day, I feel like there's a big opportunity for us right now in these next couple weeks to partner with all these groups and put together maybe a new look at a plan that that could be a new way of doing this. But the benchmark starting place is we spend $13+ million a year, and I don't think a lot of people realized how heavily invested we already are. I mean, that is literally, less than half of what the previous quarter-cent sales tax was going to generate. So awareness is one, and then I think, what does that tell us and how we can move forward? So that's just my hot take on seeing this number literally for the first time today.
And the other hot take of it is that a lot of it goes towards assets that we have debt on that we cannot stop spending this money or move it around. And then the other part of it, I think, is that we have to ask ourselves the question, what information do you need to have to make a decision around any effort that we're going to collaborate on in decision-making, or make a decision for you personally or as a council member? What do you need? What information? Because this is just the first gate opening. So what information, after all of this is being presented, is really important for you to think about, to consider participation or not? And I've had this conversation with the Mayor Pro Tem about, well, we can do a study, but if people aren't committed to a study's results, then it doesn't make any difference about doing the study. So we have to figure this out. What are we willing to do, and what is the council going to support so that we can get into this? And I know there's a short-term crisis, but long-term structural change is necessary for this to work longer. I mean, we've had a great run. I'm not going to say it, but we've had a great run since the mid-'70s on getting this and building the city. I see our arts organizations as part of what we do with economic development. Companies come here because there's a symphony, there's a performing arts center. So the question for me, I don't know where, it's not about are we doing it, it's just what are we doing and how do we do it so that we have another long run. It ought to be sustainable, not 5 years sustainable, but longer term. So with that, I think I had a couple of other hands up. I saw Ms. Ashmira and then Mr. Driggs. Did you see your hand? Yes. Ms. Ashmira?
Okay. I just wanted to say in very general terms, the arts are important in a community, so we need to step back and we need to take a very high-level look at where we see us on the arts scene and what the public interest is in investment in the arts. And the thing is, we have had the same $3 million for 10 years or however long. We have not actually kind of worked out a policy. So I would like us to get through this sort of preliminary cuts to just kind of rough cut the dimensions of the thing. You know, if somebody's putting $100 million in and we're putting in $13 million, that would be something to think about. We are progressing from being a medium-sized city to being a more urban environment, and I think that might cause us to think harder about whether we're keeping up with peer cities in terms of the kind of cultural attractions that we offer, which is related also to visiting. I think it is worth noting that this conversation takes place in the context of sensitivity about the other needs of the city, our social needs, and any diversion of funds to the arts will be seen by some people as being creating entertainment for rich people and so on. So I hope that what comes out of this, for one, is a consensus among council as to where our interest is, how it aligns with our main priorities, and what kind of investment goes with that. And in my mind, there is actually a substantial overlap there because of the educational and the other community benefits from the arts. So if we just kind of approach it from that very general standpoint, it's going to take a couple of sort of iterations, I think, to get us to the point where we can tangibly talk about, okay, these are the things that we want to fund, this is what we don't want to fund, this is what how we want it to work. But this information for right now, at least to me, is helpful to kind of give us a sense of where we are on the landscape. Thank you.
Ms. Ajmir?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So the first slide that shows $13 million in 2020 support gives us a comprehensive view on how much city is spending in supporting arts. What I'm looking for is more of a macro level funding. What is the city spend, which is 13 million something? What is the county spending? And what is the private sector nonprofit? You know, what is the total spend that currently takes to support our arts and cultural community? And what percentage of that is city? So just we get a general idea of how much funding is coming from the city. In slide number 7,
Before, Ryan hadn't gotten past to slide 7, so can we go back and let him finish, and then we'll
I thought he
you
was
jumped
on
ahead.
slide 7.
Huh?
He was on slide 7.
I think that we wanted to go ahead and finish
Okay.
up.
Go ahead.
And then come back to it so that we'd have a context for slide 7 and going forward. So I think there's some key questions for council at the end on slide 14, so just add your key questions down there and we can get them answered from the staff. I've already got yours written down, Ms. Ajmir. Okay.
So I'll quickly skip to the Arts and Science Council. So this is specific to the financial partner request for FY21. So here's the same slide from earlier, and you'll show the requests over the last 5 years ranging from 3 to 4. Our funding level was 2.9. It was bumped up in FY18 to 3.2, and that's where it's been as of FY20. So just digging into the submission that they did a little bit, just to provide context, FY20 budget versus what they project their 21 budget would be with support. It shows that it's not changing a lot, even with the support, as they've been very clear about. It's because this is primarily to replace revenue. I do have the use of city funds as submitted by them, so the city support would primarily go to programs and grant awards based on their submission. So their revenue that they submitted, and this is what I'm referencing, their FY20 budget, this is the revenue excluding Charlotte and Mecklenburg County, and they are projecting a $2.2 million loss in revenue. And then this is from their financial statements. They're showing the 5-year trend that has led to the additional funding, which would be the loss of individuals, workplace, non-workplace, and then corporate and foundation funding of $2.6 million over a 5-year period. And so with that, I left some key questions for City Council that would help staff. And the last slide would be questions, so I can leave it on this.
All right, I've got Mr. Eggleston.
I was wondering if we could, if you've got more detail now, or if not, if we can get more detail on decrease from 2.6 million in foundation funding in 1 year's time to $1 million. I mean, is that, I'm curious to know if that's one big chunk that was lost from one foundation, or is it a bunch of foundations that had funding that sunset, or that is the one that jumped out to me on that slide?
We could certainly find out.
Okay.
All right, Mayor Pro Tem?
I'm not quite ready, so go ahead. if somebody else.
Ms. Johnson, we'll come back around. Ms. Johnson?
Okay. Yeah.
Can we go back to this slide? It's number 12. And could you explain that again? That's the funding minus the
So-
city and,
Sure. So as part of our financial partners process, they submit this to us, a budget, an expenditure budget, and a revenue budget. On the revenue side, we also ask them to show their revenues excluding the city of Charlotte and Mecklenburg County. So it wouldn't include public art or the contributions that we make. And this is what they've submitted. They had a 2020 budget of $6.4 million, and they have a next year projection of $4.2 million. So this is money they would get in outside of us.
okay. So if I could piggyback off Ms. Ashmira's, if we could have like a pie graph that showed all their total funding, if we could just really look at to see what they're getting. And also in projections, is there a way to project what their funding would be if they used other alternatives such as an admissions tax or a tax on each ticket or some of those other options that our peer cities are using? Could we see how that would project in their budget?
We can see what we have. I'm not sure what is acceptable in North Carolina for things like an admission tax. I also don't know if we have the universe of ticket sales to be able to do that, but we can try to provide information to see how it would look.
Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Ajmira?
Thank you. So, do we know how much of our existing $13 million spend is coming from our tourism bucket?
So again, this is the same thing where we have money that comes from PAYGO to tourism, and then it goes to the facilities because of a 2006 action. So it's, for those facilities itself, that money is coming from PAYGO in kind of a roundabout way. It's not coming from occupancy tax.
Okay, I'm not sure if I follow that. So I guess what I'm trying to understand, how much of this $13 million spend, and you don't have to answer that right now, maybe in a follow-up materials, how much of that is coming from tourism, irrespective of funneling, whatever the transfer is in and out of balance or different funds, I just need to know what is the amount we are getting from tourism bucket. So if you go to slide number 10, okay, this slide. So in FY 2020, the request was for 3.4, we approved 3.1. In 2021, the request is for 7. But then if you look at the revenue change on slide 13, that shows about 2.5. So I'm just not clear on, that two numbers don't tie in together.
Absolutely, and looking at this from a budget perspective, that's a question that we'll be asking as well.
Oh, okay. All right, I guess that's all. I might have something later, but I'm just going through this to understand. Thank you.
Okay, so, Mr. Graham?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Ryan, you mentioned at the first slide $13 million, and you said you did not include the transit-oriented arts revenue. I'm just curious, what's that amount?
Is that? We'll have to get you that number. It's 1% of the eligible CATS capital project. I just don't have that number with me.
I would like to get that number.
Okay.
And then I'm sorry.
No, I was just amazed that you asked that question. It's just great.
Because it's 13 plus. I want to know what the plus is. And this, Ryan, this is not a question for you, and it's probably a question for the Arts and Science Council. And before I even talk about numbers, I want to talk about administration and understand the value proposition of the Arts and Science Council in 2020, 2021. Who's going to administer the money? Help me understand the infrastructure of the organization and the management of the organization. The model, as the mayor indicated, worked in the past. They kind of served as a quote-unquote United Way, collected the funds for all the organizations, kind of did the marketing and programmatic activity. That model's dying. What's the new model looking like with the board, the management? I want to understand that before I talk about dollars and cents. So is there anyone here from the Arts and Science Council that can kind of give a brief commercial about where you're going?
I think that today we're trying to just get some of those questions out.
Okay.
I think we'll have a better idea the next session.
Okay.
That they need to hear some of this as well, but I don't think we're prepared to do that.
That would be
right away.
that would
Yes.
be my starting point for me. And then my last question is, not only do I like to understand the arts 1%, but also any other initiative that the council may be considering that impacts or touch the arts and science in terms of projects moving forward. I think we ought to also take that into consideration. Bottom line, I want to know our whole universe of city involvement before I take a step further.
Okay. All right, I have next, I'm going to go and then we'll come back to those that have already spoken. So now we have Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So to Mr. Graham's point, there's another item in there that a lot of cities include in their ecosystem of arts and cultural funding, and that would be our placemaking grants. And I don't know what's our total for placemaking grants?
$250,000.
Okay, so that would be something you'd add in there too. And that, to me, that gets back to, and I've talked to a number of you about this, some sort of a baseline study to understand what we really are talking about, what we have. I don't know when we get to the point of having enough knowledge to say, you know, what do we value here? So when Portland passed their tax for the arts, they stipulated that a certain amount, the first $1 million had to go to arts education in the schools. And you hear that a lot, that people say they value that, they want that, but I don't know when we ever get to have that conversation, because that's not really what the ASC does right now, per se, unless I'm wrong, but funds the school system so that they can have arts classes, band, music, that kind of thing. And I just don't know how we get to the point of having that conversation, because that's not really the model that we're dealing with right now. So I still would like to see just a baseline study, and also say, what do other cities spend? Do they in administrative costs? What are the average salaries for the people issuing the, approving the grants? Who approves the grants? That kind of thing.
Okay, Mr. Winston?
Yeah, I think part of my questions or comments are piggyback off of council members Graham and Isel. On top of placemaking, I would like to think about our open streets program as well. And also, I think overall, you know, arts and culture is an important part of it. So where else do we have room in our budgets? Like, I'm just thinking of things like block parties and things like this, because arts and culture doesn't begin and end with the institutions, right? And the whole big part about this is, how do we create an ecosystem within our neighborhoods, within the space of individual artists and folks that contribute to the cultural spaces. So how do we use our money to best cultivate those folks and not just institutions in this? So as we kind of form this policy, which I agree with Mr. Driggs, that we should think about guidance for all of, whenever city council is, whoever is on city council and whoever's running the city, to operate from, that we're thinking of those things. For instance, open streets might be a platform, right? Just like a stage might be a platform for other artists and cultural contributors to hone their craft and to take steps. I would have questions about the ASC's slide 11. I see increases in the personnel costs and the operating costs, despite the well-publicized downsizing of staff and the need to look at the way ASC operates. I'm not connecting the logical increase in personnel needs when we're decreasing the number of people that are on payroll. So I would just like to square that up as we continue the conversations.
All right. Mr. Driggs?
Thank you, Mayor. First, I wanted to recognize and welcome County Commissioner Susan Harden. Thank you for joining us today. You can take our message back to your colleagues. On the hospitality tax question, and this is a little bit further to Ms. Ajmira's point, do the terms of the permission that we have now to levy hospitality taxes in the buckets allow for arts funding? So if we look at exactly how those are described, they have general description, convention center and stadium, and then there's a little bit of language that's sort of a catch-all that says other things to promote tourism. Would that permit, without any special dispensation from the state, that we look at hospitality funding? And I don't want to give Tom Murray a heart attack here, but I'm just trying to establish, as we consider our options, or would it take a special application to the state to look at those funds?
So before we give Tom a heart attack, I think, Councilmember Driggs, we should consult both our attorney and also the attorneys that help write the language so that we don't have a misstep. So
all right, I just put that out there as a topic for research as we consider our options. On the Cats Capital side, if they spent $2 billion on the Blue Line, does that mean that $20 million went to art for stations?
Based on the construction costs, 1% of the construction costs.
So the
So I think
budget
20
was
billion,
$2
but
billion. What was the construction cost?
Subtracting the design and the architect. Do you know what the Blue Line amount was?
We'll have to get that.
I have it upstairs. I can get you that one quickly.
A substantial number over the years that went into art, but that was tied to stations. Is that right? It was actually, it wasn't general public art funding.
It wasn't general public art funding, it was tied to stations.
Right,
generally.
okay, but that was still
It's like
kind of
what we
an
have in
arts
schools at the-
investment that we made.
It was.
I just think going forward, we're going to have to get to another level of detail about how the current funding is being invested, look at where the alignment is with our city priorities, look also at the administration. I mean, questions were raised during the bond campaign, and so we would need to have a framework in which we were comfortable that our investment lined up with our priorities. So all those are just suggestions as we continue this conversation going forward.
All right, Ms. Watlington?
Everything's been said. Pass.
Okay. So, anyone else? Yes, Ms. Ajmira?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I agree with my colleague, Mr. Driggs, on looking at the tourism bucket and how it could be utilized to address some of the funding gaps. I know Councilmember Winston had brought up question about personnel and how that's gone up. I know it's not as significant as some of the other buckets, but I had seen in that they had, after the sales tax measure was not approved, they had reduced their staffing. So is the expectation that it will go up in 2021? Or are they going to hire them, are they going to bring the staffing level back to where it was?
So Ryan, if I misspeak, step in please. So this is just an application. It's a point in time, and I know that issues evolve. So much like the other financial partners, we can go back and ask. But again, Ryan just pulled this from their application that was submitted in December.
Correct.
And then for the operating cost, could you elaborate on that? Is it building? what is operating cost here?
So that's like non-personnel excluding the grant awards. So it could be all the bricks and mortar things, supplies,
Paperclips.
marketing, things like that.
Okay, so I see that that's also going up. So I'd like to understand the increase in operating cost, especially when we are struggling with the funding. So having some more information on this would be helpful.
I think.
Absolutely.
Did you have any
I'm
other
done.
questions? I've been listening to this and known since the failure of the half-cent sales tax, this would be an issue. All of us are aware of it. We've all heard a lot of things, but I would really like, we're talking about money being used to funding the gaps. I think that this is an issue that's a structural issue as much as it is money. It is about what we want to do and how we want to do it, and whether or not there's consolidations. After the recession in 2008, the Foundation for the Carolinas had been funding a number of social services programs, and they went through each one of them and put them in buckets and said that we will help you figure out how to be a better organization, a stronger organization, if you will consider consolidations and looking for synergies that you could work well together. When we look at this, it's not just the money. When you go back and look at the institutions that we're funding and how many of them are operated in city-owned facilities, how many use city-owned facilities, and how much we all have invested in these, I think it's not, and then look at what we want to do. I really believe at some point we have to start looking at how do we create artists across the city. One of our issues is that we look at these big facilities and we've got them. We support them financially from maintenance and debt service, and we have an operating contribution. But at some point, even cities are changing their philosophy around arts and culture. And that's why I think when we start thinking about, are we supporting the artists that are coming to our city to live, that contribute to the creativity, that contribute to our technology and all of those kinds of things, maybe we're looking at it as like what the current state is instead of what is the future state. And I really am concerned that we are not looking, that we're talking about the money, and I just challenge us to look, yes, we've got some obligations that we have to fulfill. But at the same time, what kind of city do we want to be to support arts and culture? And when we talk about what those long-term goals, are we going to support individual artists? Where should they be supported and how should they be supported? But I think just looking at the idea of how much money do we need to address the funding gap is a question that doesn't address our sustainability efforts long-term. And then I also believe that when we look at the percentages, I think Ms. Ashmira asked, city, county, private sector. There's foundations, there are endowments, but earned revenue is just as important in an organization like this as anything. And so we can't just kind of, lock in on certain numbers and say, well, we've come up with an idea or an answer. We will answer, I'm sure, Mr. Jones, all of these questions. But the real question is, where is there synergy to make this work better long-term and do it in a way that we can fund it and be successful long-term? And I think that requires us to have an agreement with not just the county, but it has to be an agreement that these organizations are willing to sign on to. There's no point in us doing something for someone if they don't buy into the philosophy and mission of what we're doing. So I believe in our arts group and our work in this area. I'm not about saying we shouldn't do something, but something needs to be built upon sustainability, and it ought to examine every aspect of what we do. We've talked about the administration, that's all well and good, but talking about what is our opera, what is our symphony, what do they do? And even the grants that the county does, their money is restricted to neighborhoods. I forget what they call it, block grants for neighborhoods. Well, is that the best way for us to do that? And that's a conversation we have to have. So we're talking about money, but I tell you, I think that the long-term goal is to have a sustainable arts community for a growing city like ours. Are we doing everything that needs to be done? I don't think so. Are we doing enough with this, or should it be done differently? That's the question that I would ask before we start talking about funding.
So, Ms. Ashmira?
I agree with you in terms of long-term vision and sustainability of our arts community. While we are trying to gather all this information, can we also find out what is the spend on minority and women artists? Sure. Thank you.
Mr. Winston?
It's kind of, well, my question was, seeing that the potential request, $6 million of those city funds would be for program and grant awards, would love to see what kind of equity framework or equity plan or equity lens would be put on the distribution of those funds.
All right. Mr. Driggs?
I just wanted to say that we have a couple of months in which to get this year's budget done. So I think what we're talking about could take time, frankly. And therefore, we may need to be thinking in terms of what we do this year and then what our plan is with the benefit of more time to work on this for next year.
You know, I agree that we have to do that, but again, I don't think we should throw money without an agreement between the various organizations and institutions that they're willing to participate. Just to continue to fund something, when you know the next year we have to work together, then if everybody's not on the same page of working together, I don't see how it makes a difference in the long term.
If we can get there in the time frame, but you know how this works, right? Time goes by quickly, and we need to iterate and converge on kind of input to the manager that allows him to construct the budget.
You know, we have to attract businesses here on a dime. We get less than 45 days to say, this is what we're going to do and how we're going to build something. And so if we don't have that sense of urgency around this, then to me that says it's a signal that I don't think we should be, or we have to pay attention to the signal that sends.
Mayor,
Mr. Graham.
I concur with that, and that's why I was talking about the value proposition and the structure of how we're going to build this thing moving forward. I do believe that we can move swiftly. This is not something we just started thinking about yesterday. Quite frankly, there should have been a plan B in November, but that's hindsight. So I think we can move swiftly, steadily, and kind of really have that broader question with the Arts and Science Council in terms of asking a very simple question: where do we go from here, and how do we get there? How we can play a role in getting there with all the institutions? Because there are a number of, we lose the system that we have. I'm not sure we want 13 arts organizations approaching us for funding. That would be a disaster.
Right. Mr. Bakari?
Yeah, I fully agree with Councilmember Graham on that. I think that if we approach these next 2 months, and to that point, I think a lot of folks, Mayor Pro Tem, many others, have been working hard behind the scenes already to get a better understanding of the parts and pieces here. So we're not starting from scratch. But I think if we separate this whole initiative into 2 buckets, and the second bucket, which I agree, I think Mr. Driggs' point is spot on, is the longer term bucket of we want to be, for lack of a better term, world-class, effective, and efficient. And that takes the benchmarking, that takes all the things that you can't do overnight, right? But I think there's a way, if we focus in the short term now, the worst thing we could do is all say, here's a round number from 3 different parties. Let's throw it in a big bucket and kind of hope it all works in the end, right? That is the wrong idea. That would even putting contractual strings to it at a high level, that's the kind of thing that really lacked the accountability during the referendum that really caused the challenge. So I think the short-term goal isn't to figure out and say we're going to have it all perfect on those long-term benchmarks and things that are needed for effectiveness and efficiency. I think the short-term thing is if we're the city and the county's the county and the private sector's there, that we say these things are in our wheelhouse. And we will make sure that we understand the cost model, the growth needs, the challenges inside their 990s, all of those things. And we'll make sure that this next year is a pilot where we're going to be accountable for those things. And the county's going to be accountable for looking at those. It's the individual accountability in the approach, I think, that is that interim step that enables no one to go out of business that isn't meant to go out of business. The funding's there. yet we're paying attention to the things that matter most, not hoping that it all works out in the wash.
Yeah. I'm going to say this last thing. I think that that's so important. We're building a new library. A library is no longer a place that I go and check out a book and get a card and do all of that. And here we are talking about, well, what does that mean for arts and culture? We really have to begin to think, and we know that there is a need to replace Discovery Place. All of these things are in front of us. If we can't think about that now, today, before we start committing to where we're going, I think we're missing an opportunity to actually think about our city as a place that we want to have the cultural and arts scene to be very strong, and what we want people to be able to say about both the artists in this community as well as the other types of programs that we need to build on our culture. You know, a library lecture and performances and all of those things are going to be coming up soon as well. There's just so much going on that not having the conversation with everyone in this community that influences it and has the ability to contribute to it is, we all have specific ideas that we probably approach this. I'm going to get Ms. Watlington to draw us a project management schedule and get that done, but I have Mr. Winston first.
Well, to that end, and without going too far down this potential rabbit hole, not just with this topic, but this whole discussion over this past 2.5 hours, it seems like, you know, there are certain buckets in terms of our council priorities where a lot of these topics fall, and we need to have a lot of discussion to bring back some recommendations to the entire council. For instance, we're talking about the arts from an economic development standpoint, but we also need to get an intergovernmental understanding of how we're approaching this. It seemed like there were similar questions and conversations around emergency management, around how we're funding our financial partners. So is there some type of workflow that could be figured out where we are able to ask these questions within our respective focus areas, and then bring that back to the entire group on another future budget workshop where we are saying, here's our analysis from our intergovernmental standpoint. Here's what the county is doing. Here's what the school system is doing. Here's a shortfall. Here's how we should move forward. But here's how we're looking at this from an economic development standpoint. This would be the wisdom in the short, medium, and long term, and kind of deal with that in that perspective. So just a different outlook on the literal workflow, so we can get some of these questions answered, but we can also have it on a council level discussion at the same time.
Okay. All right, so Mr. Jones, what's next?
It's funny you asked. I was about to ask you that, Mayor. So we're ready to tackle everything that is in front of us. Just level setting for us. The expectation is we'll continue to monitor our peer cities. We'll get some additional information. We don't have, at this point, a follow-up planned. Is this something that the next strategy session the council would like us to come back to? So it doesn't have to be now, but we would like to know what the expectation is in this 60-day time frame.
You know, from what I heard, there are a number of just factual questions. How much is this? Where are we going with that? Can you do this or can you do that? So I think all of you have captured that. The question that I have around this is that we are one part of this pie of funding, and I don't know that I think a conversation with our partners is a better idea to figure out where people are, because our lay of the land may be what we've been talking about, but if theirs isn't congruent with ours, then so what? We've just spent a wonderful 2.5 hours on what we think. And so I would say that my suggestion would be that you and I and the Mayor Pro Tem sit down with some folks, kind of talk about what we've talked about today, understand this is a short term and a long term, but what are the requirements for each? And who's going to be willing to participate? If everybody's made up their mind what it's going to be, that's one question. If people are flexible around discussion and fluid on what their decisions might be, that's another. So that would be my suggestion. Is anybody concerned about that? We can summarize that in a meeting or a note that goes out with the budget information as well. And then we can also talk about if it's helping to move the ball in any direction. And feel free to always come into the office and talk about it. It's always it's a good conversation. It's one of the most important ones for the way that we develop and operate. I think that that's on our table. It's kind of like, as Mr. Winston said, and let's just be the second time this week that I've agreed with Mr. Winston that this is maybe the prototype for the kinds of issues that are coming through. I know something's going to happen. I'm going to go like that.
There's a lot of agreement around this table today, I might add.
There is.
What's going on? I
know. So I think that we need to continue to, as much conversation as you can have. If you're in a certain place, you ought to be talking about it. Okay, but we'll get the group together. Is that fine? Does that work? Okay. So it's not 4 o'clock yet. We stop at 4:30 or 5?
I thought 5.
5. Okay, we got lots of time.
Okay, so Mayor, I would like, is Liz still in? Mayor, we'd like to flip and have the streetlight program next because it is on an upcoming agenda item. We still believe we can fit both of these in, and I believe that's the quicker of the two.
Street lights.
Okay.
Last tab of green.
This is the last presentation?
It's not the last, it's just the last of them.
Where is it? Last one. Green lights, I mean.
Got it. Yep, thanks. All right, I apologize. I thought I had one more presentation before I had to get up here, so I took a restroom break. Good evening, Mayor, Council. My name is Liz Babson, and I'm your Transportation Director. So today, and let me check since I missed the introduction while I was out. We're going till 4:30?
5.
5, okay, awesome. And then you go after? We'll see. All right. I'm just trying to figure out how fast to talk, so again, I apologize. I'll be thorough. But I can talk fast as well. So thank you for having us today. It has been some time since we've been before you all to present on street lighting, so we've got a lot of good information and hopefully some updates that are somewhat positive that'll be some good news to share. Okay. Does that not work? All right. So this is just a real quick overview of sort of the presentation items that we're going to go through today. I'm going to give you an overview of the program. We're going to talk about our process for how we install streetlights because that's important. We'll talk a little bit about our current inventory, but specifically focusing on the LED upgrades that have been underway. And then we'll talk about a new initiative around safe neighborhoods and conclude with some budget information because this is a budget workshop. And then we'll talk about the Billy Graham Parkway, which is an upcoming project that's on your council agenda for Monday night. So it's important to understand this, so we're going to come at this from a real high level. Who lights our streets? Well, NCDOT lights interstates only. And I'll show you in a moment what that looks like on a map. In partnership with Duke Energy, the city of Charlotte is then responsible for lighting the rest of the streets within the city. And so here's what that looks like on a map. Again, NCDOT lights the streets shown in blue. Okay, this thing's kind of delayed. These are state-maintained roads that the city is then responsible for lighting. And that's about 20% of our thoroughfares that are in the city. And then last but not least are all of the rest of the streets that we're responsible for. And these include all of the city-maintained streets, thoroughfares and residential streets. And so just as a reminder, we do have some council policy around our street lighting efforts, and that's really about making our streets safer for all of our transportation users. And then just to give you a few numbers so you have some perspective on the size of that system, we've got over 76,000 street lights, and we've got 18,500 pedestrian lights. And it's important to note these pedestrian lights are typically on local streets or in activity centers where we have high volumes of pedestrians.
And so also, again, we've got lots of street lights out there, and there are a number of different ways that those street lights are installed. We do them through capital investment that the city undertakes. So for example, if we're building a new street or widening a road project, then we'll go ahead and include those installations of those street lights as part of that project. Also, as development occurs throughout the city, we work very closely with the development projects to evaluate the current lighting and look for opportunities to either install new or upgrade existing. And then finally, consistent with our Vision Zero program, we are looking at our high injury network and making sure that we are targeting areas where we're concerned about safety. And so we really have two processes by which we install street lights throughout the city. That's both on thoroughfares and on residential streets. And each one is a little different than the other, and so I want to share those processes with you real quickly. So thoroughfares are things like the examples shown on the screen. We have 600 miles of thoroughfares within the city, and 80% of those are currently with streetlights, leaving about 120 miles of thoroughfares that have no lighting. And so here's what that looks like on, yes?
What was that stat?
Over 600 miles of thoroughfares, 80% of those have lighting, and 120 miles, or 20%, does not. And so here's what that looks like on a map. And so again, what you see in green are the streets that do not currently have street lighting. And so what I'd like to point out about those is many of those are sort of on the fringes of the city, and they are areas that have been annexed over time. And again, consistent with state policy, the state doesn't light streets that aren't interstates. So we've inherited over the years a lot of streets in the edges of our city limits that do not currently have streetlights. And so what you'll see showing up in orange are the upcoming planned projects that we will undertake in the next year to add streetlights where they don't exist. And so let's spend a little bit of time talking about residential streets, because we actually have more residential streets in our system than thoroughfares. These are, as you might imagine, low volume, low speed, and they provide connections into and through neighborhoods. And again, a majority of our streets in our system fall into this classification. All right, it's not moving. And so the process for that is a little bit different, because I have said before, streetlights are a little bit like speed humps, and people like them or they don't, and there's not much in the middle. And so we make sure that we have a thoughtful process on our residential streets about working with the residents that live on those streets to go about installing streetlights. And so again, we can get those requests a number of ways. Residents can call in to 311, they can go online, they can call the department directly. And then we work with Duke Energy to complete the design. And then at that point, when we know where the poles are located, for example, we will go out to every adjacent property owner and talk to them about that new street lighting project and how it impacts their property. Because we want to make sure that we have support, a majority of support in that area before we proceed. And we are looking for 75% of those residents to agree with that design. And so then we'll notify, we go one step further even, we'll notify all of the property owners, and then they have 3 days to appeal if they have any concerns or questions. And we work very hard during this time to really make adjustments that we're able to do through the design so that we can satisfy all the concerns that come from the residents. And this is important, and we're pretty proud of this, because as you see, of the 97 residential street lighting projects currently on that list, we typically only have 1 to 2 appeals per year. So we're pretty proud of that record. Another thing I'd like to say at this point, and many of you as council members that have served for some time will remember, we've had some challenges with getting street lights on residential streets because it often isn't a high priority to Duke. And so the schedule in the last several years was as long as 18 to 24 months. Well, I'm happy to say that Duke, through some negotiations with the city, has reallocated resources, and we are now down to 6 months turnaround once those requests come in. And so shown here in green are all of the residential streets that do not have street lighting on them. And again, consider the way in which we go about installing street lights on residential streets. It's really initiated by the resident. And so you'll also see violent crime hotspots. I'll dig into that in a moment in the next slide, because that's something that we're pretty excited about. We're going to work closely with these communities and the police department and really work with the neighborhoods, not wait for them to initiate these requests, but rather get out there and get in front of things and work very closely to see where opportunities might exist to install streetlights in those areas. And so you can see those 4 areas shown here, zoomed in on those maps. And then again, as I mentioned, we'll work closely with CMPD to expand and enhance our current program, and really city staff will help facilitate that instead of waiting for the residents to initiate that request. And then we'll work with CMPD to really evaluate the effectiveness of streetlights in those areas. And so let's talk a little bit about LEDs. These are the 4 different classifications of street lighting that we have in our system. Starting from the upper left, that's the oldest, and going down through this, LEDs are the newest. And so just to give you some visual perspective of how LEDs look compared to our most recent version, which is high pressure sodium, it's not only are LEDs more environmentally friendly, and now only recently come at a lower cost than other options to us, through the rate structure with Duke Energy, it also just provides a better lighting and more natural light. And so again, similar to the way we install new street lights, upgrades happen through Duke maintenance activities, and those are ones that they do at their expense. So I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. And then we do them upgrades through development projects and CIP projects as well. And so here's what our lighting inventory looks like right now. We do still have a significant portion of our system that is high pressure sodium. I want to bring your attention to the mercury vapor, and there it is, because 14% of that system is mercury vapor, and Duke has committed at their expense to upgrade those over the next 3 years. And so the upgrade effort has been fairly new for us because Duke's rate structure is approved and set from the North Carolina Utilities Commission, and really only in the last 2 years has that rate structure been recalibrated to a point where those LEDs start to make sense financially for the city to work with Duke to make that LED upgrade happen. So what you can see is the work that's been done over the last 3 years. So we're now at about 15% of our system is LEDs. And let me show you what that looks like on a map. So what's shown here in blue is existing streetlights. And then what's shown in green are the completed projects that we've done over the last 3 years. Here's our high injury network, because again, Vision Zero and keeping our streets safe is very important to us. And so that has influenced the projects that we're planning for the future. And so what's shown in yellow, you'll start to see a lot of that red go away. These are the projects that we have underway in the next year. And this represents 6,000 new LED upgrades, which will bring our system to 22% LEDs by the time we're finished. And so that's what all of that, that's a little bit busy. And so let's go back to the crime hotspots, because that's been another area of focus. And so I'm happy to report that 3 of the 4 crime hotspots actually have LED upgrade projects in them. So the first 2, Beatty's Ford and Sharon Amity, are shown in yellow. That means they are being planned right now and will be installed in the next year. And then the last one, Sugar Creek, is green, and that one has already been installed. And so let's talk a little bit about outages, because we've done a lot of improvements in this space as well. Our staff has worked really hard to create some technology solutions to help accelerate our ability to really do the inventory and report those outages to Duke. And so literally just in the last 2 years, we went from doing about 5% of the system to now we are tracking at 25% of the system this year, which means every 4 years we'll be able to go out and ride the city streets and look for those outages. That's important for 2 reasons. Obviously, it's important for ensuring the safety of the users of our transportation system, but the way the Duke rate structure works, we pay for those lights whether they're operational or not. And so we're really excited about the outage rate. That has come down quite a bit. Duke is now turning around within 72 hours. If it's a pretty standard, straightforward repair, they're able to turn that around within 3 days as soon as we report it. And then this is just a screenshot from Duke's system. I always like to put a plug in for this because, again, we pay for those street lights whether they are operational or not, and so there's lots of ways that you and the community can report those outages. The fastest way is to go straight to Duke. You can do that by phone or online. And then there's lots of other options, calling into the department directly. You can go online and use our CLT Plus mobile app or call 311. And so as we conclude, let's talk a little bit about budget. This is the budgeted amount that we have to operate the current streetlights within the city of Charlotte. So we're just under $10 million. We are projecting to spend slightly less than that this year, and that's for a couple of reasons. This cost goes to pay that electricity bill, and we budget for new streetlights that come online throughout the year. And so what has happened is we are now seeing an $850,000 savings that's resulting from two key things. A couple of those projects have not come online as planned, so they will come online next year, and we'll budget for that. Not anything that we did to impact the schedule, it's just the way the development occurs. And then also, again, as the North Carolina Utilities Commission restructured the rate structure for Duke, that cost has come down for LEDs, and so we are seeing a little bit of savings in our street lighting budget. And so what we are proposing is to take that savings and do what we are calling our highest priority street lighting project, which is on Billy Graham Parkway. We're pretty excited about this because this is an expensive project. It's on our high injury network. It's the oldest thoroughfare that does not currently have street lights. Pretty high volumes, and obviously its access to the Douglas International Airport is important, and this will be a 5.5 mile stretch. And it's going to cost $1.8 million. This is more expensive than a typical project because this is an expressway type facility and requires certain types of poles that are what we call metal poles with underground utilities. All of that is pretty major construction, and so it's pretty expensive. And you will have this on your council agenda February 10th for approval. Again, the bulk of that cost is coming from the current budget in street lighting savings, as well as our Vision Zero capital funding. And with that, I am finished. If anyone has any questions.
Mr. Eggleston?
Just quickly, I'm glad you mentioned the CLT Plus app. Just wondering what kind of adoption we're seeing in terms of the outages being reported through there versus the other channels.
Can you say the first part again? I didn't hear you.
Sorry, CLT Plus?
Yes.
And just, are we seeing success so far with people using that as the reporting method?
I don't have those numbers. We can follow up and provide that to you. I'm looking around to see if anybody else might, but we can check on that and give you that in a follow-up.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Driggs?
Could you clarify our relationship with Duke? Do we pay them for all of the work they do, or are there things for which they are liable themselves?
So the simplest way to answer that is the rate structure that we pay them to operate the streetlights covers operations, installation, maintenance, so it's all inclusive. It is technically their facility within our right-of-way, but we pay them for that service and support.
But they own the lighting system?
Yes.
And I have had some complaints from people who said lights went out, they reported them, they were stayed out for quite a long time. Is that a Duke issue, or how do we follow up on something like that?
So if you had the location, that would be great, and we could check the system and follow up in that way. But just in general, if it's nothing more than replacing a light, they can respond to that within 72 hours. We've seen them do it because we're constantly auditing the work, because as you saw, we pay a lot of money for this program. The other piece is sometimes it's more complicated than that and requires additional wiring because maybe some of the electricity has been disrupted.
Okay, thank you.
But if you ever have a question, about a specific location, we can answer that with that level of detail.
Okay, Mr. Winston?
Thank you. I got a couple questions and comments. To that, and I think slide 24, the reporting streetlight outages, this is too much for citizens to figure out. They look to the city to provide answers. I think we have to figure out how to make the fastest and best way to report streetlight outages to be for them to dial through. I mean, this is talk about simplifying government and better connecting what we do inside here to the folks that are using it. I think that should be a goal of ours, to make 311 the best avenue, and/or the app that we now have. We should be the conduits to get that done. The slide before that, slide 23, in relation to us looking at street lighting as a way to improve neighborhoods, especially those, as we try to impact the occurrence of violent crimes, I think we should maybe look at a subjective analysis, maybe of how we get stuff attended to, because we might have a series of lights out in a certain neighborhood that it would make empirical sense to get to those first before we do something in a different part of town. So I think we should consider figuring out how to make that work. Slide 16, in terms of the evolution of lighting technology, it's a question I asked in the last consent agenda item. I find it hard to believe that technology has not created a solar street light. And if it's out there, as we are a huge customer for these things, we need to push the demand for this, especially as it relates to our CAP. We need to push our vendors and tell them that this is what we want. I feel like this is a prime opportunity to take things off of the traditional energy grid, and we can push that. We can push that if we so desire. So I hope we'll consider figuring out if there was a policy or language that we can employ that says, hey, in future street lighting projects, we desire to take them off of the energy grid. And I think a solar street light is perfect. I mean, we can almost put them, in a sense, where they need to be, as high as they need to be to take full advantage of that solar energy output. Slide number 12, I would ask us, as we continue to look at equity issues in this city, as we understand that certain neighborhoods have more influence on or better or best understand how to use government as a tool to get the things that they need or want, and others have other structural or systemic barriers to getting those things done. I would question why we don't have our own city plan for lighting the entire map of our residential streets. If the first step is residents submitting their own requests, again, we know that there are equity issues there. So I would question why we don't have this plan, and I would encourage us to do that, especially thinking about how that might be implemented year to year from the tool of the budget to get those things done. In that same vein, I would ask in slide 10, do we have an executable plan for lighting all of Charlotte's thoroughfares? Is there a plan to get all of these thoroughfares lit?
Yes. So the way we currently approach this is, again, I showed you the $850,000 this year that we have in budget savings, which is much higher than normal. So I don't want to misrepresent that we can do big projects every year. But we, within that budget, are constantly looking at projected savings, and then we will install streetlights where we can. In addition, with the new Vision Zero funding that we had approved through the 2018 CIP, we are targeting street lighting as well. We've obviously focused on our high injury network because that's consistent with those program goals, but we have crashes all over the city, so we started with the highest priorities first.
So it sounds like we're doing this as an as-can basis. And so what I'm suggesting is, if in a perfect world, if we can do this in 5 years, do we have even if that plan is aspirational, if we had the perfect budgetary allotments year to year, how will we get all of these thoroughfares, the 20% that don't have lighting? If we think that this is a priority, assuming that we do, because we talk about it often, it's probably the most common question I get, but speed humps and street lights from constituents.
We understand.
How do we get those proactively done? I would love to see a plan to make that happen.
So, Councilmember Winston, it's interesting that you say that. As we were preparing for this, and that's, I believe, where Liz was pivoting to, starting off in the gaps that we have in some of our crime spots. If we did business as usual, you would wait for somebody to submit a request. So we're doing the exact opposite, somewhat with this equity lens, going in and basically making sure that people understand what the process is. And the same thing with the high injury crash network in Vision Zero. We're just attempting to be more proactive, knowing where some of our issues are.
My last couple of questions are about slides 3 and 4. I would like to know the data. What is the state's budget, the NC.DOT's budget? What does that look like year to year for lighting the interstates that fall within the city limits of Charlotte? I don't know how, if it breaks down to that, but if it does, I'd like to extrapolate those numbers. And then on slide 4, you show the state maintained streets that the city lights, which falls within our responsibility. So my question there is, how do we reconcile that tax burden? If they are state maintained roads, so I would imagine that is obviously it's tax dollars that are going to fund this, but if the burden isn't on the state, those are our city's tax dollars, how does that kind of transfer the responsibility of tax dollars? How does that work, I guess? Does that make sense, Mr. Manager?
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions regarding streetlights, Mr. Eggleston?
Briefly along the same lines as Mr. Winston on a couple of smart streetlight technologies, I agree if there's opportunities, if solar lights exist, which I presume they do, might be limited in certain areas with dense tree canopy coverage, but there would certainly be other areas where they would work. In that same vein, and I think this was before most of us were on council, but didn't we put in kind of a test pilot smart streetlight thing into the North End Smart District at some point?
So Renee, our CIO, updated you all, I believe, at your council meeting last week as part of the manager's report, and it is included as the plan going forward in that partnership with Microsoft to look at the North End Smart District and put in smart streetlights in that area.
But none of that had been done today, been done today?
That has not been done
Okay, I thought
today.
some of it had been done several years ago. Maybe it had just started talking about it. Could be misremembering too.
We have talked about it in years past, but I don't believe we were ever able to
executed it.
implement anything.
Okay. And then I know too that maybe we've looked at this, there are streetlights as well, looking at new technologies as we start to upgrade, that can report their own outages. And there are streetlights that can also self-dim based on like a timing or based on if there's a car or a pedestrian coming or things like that. How much have we looked into?
So I believe those all fall under the smart streetlights.
So the ones that we're looking at doing would be ones that would have some of those capabilities?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so I think the point here is that council's going to be asked to approve the Billy Graham Parkway Safety Project on February 10th. So are there any questions specifically about the Billy Graham project? Vision Zero and the streetlights portion of it.
I just have a comment on that. Obviously, I understand why it makes sense. It seems like a good thing. I would just point out that this is a very auto-centric, car-centric improvement. There are not a lot of pedestrians that are going to be walking along Billy Graham Parkway. Again, as we try to build neighborhoods that are more pedestrian-centric and pedestrian-friendly, you know, my question would be, is this the highest and best use of improving the walkability of places? Is there not another thoroughfare? I understand the fatalities and the airport, but again, it's going to come off that, hey, this is for people that are coming and going to the airport and not necessarily for folks that have to or forced to walk to work, to the bus stop, to childcare, to and from school. Just like to keep that in front of mind.
Okay, thank you. All right, Mr. Jones, are we going to do the capital projects update?
Yes, Mayor, we would like to, mainly because I think this may be one of the quicker presentations. This was made to the Budget and Effectiveness Committee, and I think Phil is doing the exact same presentation. So those individuals in the Budget and Effectiveness Committee, my apologies if this is the second run through, but we thought that because this was such a big issue over the course of the last year, that we should make sure that each council member has a level of information as it relates to where we are with some of our capital projects that have a little bit of a concern, not many, as well as an update with some of the technology around it.
Good afternoon, Mayor, members of council, Phil Rieger, Director of General Services, Jennifer Smith, our city engineer, is with me today, and we're going to give a very brief general capital project update. I want to draw your attention to your packet. Today's presentation is really based off of the general capital investment plan project update that you have in your workshop or in your packet. So it's this blue thing with some yellow lines on it. I'm going to skip some parts of this in the interest of time to get moving, and so that we just get right to the projects. But just want you to know we've been working hard over the last couple of years to improve our project management practice. One of those things, or one of those outcomes that you've seen from that work, is the project dashboard. Just a reminder that that's there, and it's a great place to get current information about projects. It's updated quarterly, and there's the URL or the website for it. So on this sheet, on this handout, there are 178 projects listed, and those projects represent the projects that are currently and actively being managed. That's sort of the world. This is the universe of projects. Of those 178 projects, 8 of them are highlighted in yellow. And they're highlighted in yellow because we've classified them as having some budget risk. And so what does that mean? What that means is that there are some projects that have some circumstances around them, and Jennifer's going to describe those circumstances that just have caught our attention and has created or has resulted in us paying really close and particular attention to them. What I want you to note, though, is that just because they're classified as having some risk, it does not necessarily mean that they're going to require more money. In fact, you're going to find, as Jennifer described some of those circumstances, some of the projects will likely be addressed without additional city funds. And the last thing that I would say before I turn it over to Jennifer is that there aren't any projects in these 8 that we're going to talk about that represent large funding gaps. And so with that said, let me turn it over to our city engineer and let her give you a status update on the 8 projects that are classified as some budget risk.
So first, I'm into numbers too, and I just have to repeat, there's 178 projects with a total value of over $1.1 billion. 8 of those have the budget risk, and over the next month or 2, we'll be narrowing that down to determine exactly what that number is or what that really means. There's 19 projects that were completed since the last update. We'll be looking at those 19 projects to see what sort of savings we've had from those that can then be used to fund any overages we have on the 8 projects. So just to start with the first one, these first 3 that I'm going to show you were actually yellow or had some budget risk. That was shown on last year's document and project update list that we had given you. The Idlewild-Monroe intersection. This project is also proposed in the 2020 budget to get about $2.5 million. In addition to that, CDOT has asked the CRTPO for some additional funding to complete the scope of work that's out there right now. The CRTPO votes on this project for that additional funding on February 19th, so we'll know whether or not all that funding's available or not. So this is one of those that Phil says may come off the list. We're just waiting for timing on this one to see if we have that additional funding coming through. The second project with some budget risk that was also on last year's is the Northwest Police Division. The reason why this is on as yellow is that I didn't have land last year. I still don't have the land acquired yet this year. We have identified it. We've been negotiating with the 2 parcel owners. The larger of the 2 parcels will probably come for your approval of that acquisition in March. And the smaller parcel we're still in negotiations with. So as soon as we have that land, I'm able to do some planning for that new station, we'll be able to determine if that budget that we have set aside is good enough. We're thinking it is, but again, until we have the land and can really do that analysis, I just am out of caution keeping it yellow to let you know that. The third
Jennifer, before you go on, I'd like to ask some questions and updates on the police station work. This was brought up at one of Taiwo's 2040 presentations by a group of people, and it was around, we often build space in there for community rooms, and that space doesn't get used for community rooms because the communities don't want to meet in a police station. And even though we want to encourage it, if it's not working, I just wondered overall if you could kind of give us a sense of, the space and what we're doing in those in those buildings and how we're utilizing that space now.
And that is that on the new ones that we're planning, or that's even existing divisions?
I'm getting a gauge of what's historical for what goes forward.
Okay. So the third project that was also shown last time is the Gold Line project. This is yellow. It was yellow last time. It's a big project. We're keeping our eye on this one. It really is just the sheer magnitude of this project. It's a $150 million project, and we're continuing to monitor it. We're getting close to the end of construction. We're going to have to put it online to start running and doing the testing on it, and then we'll continue to work with the contractor and the FTA in the closeout process.
Mr. Eggleston has a question about this.
Just that it was my understanding that the screw up on the Hawthorne Bridge by the contractors was not going to put any additional cost burden on the city, and I see that as a potential or piece of the explanation for why there could be an overrun.
Yeah, so we don't believe it's our fault, but in the end, there will be most likely a claim because they're going to claim that it's our fault. That will go through, and we'll work with our attorneys on evaluating that. and possibly may go to litigation. So again, I'm
That's just the
highlighting it
potential
as a.
outcome if we were to lose
Yes.
the case.
Yes.
Okay.
Again, I don't want you to be surprised that I come and say, we need more money for this project because of that. I want to let you know now that I'm thinking about those things. This next project, this project, Beatties Ford Road Widening Project, is in construction now. And it is a new project that's yellow. But as we've been doing construction on this project and installing our underground utilities, we have found that the soils out there are not as good as what we had originally intended, or what we had originally, I guess, assumed. And so we did do testing beforehand, but we can't test up and down the whole way and every amount of soil. And so this one is on there. We're still trying to figure out exactly what that impact is, but it is, the main driver here is the bad soils that we're having to put back in the trench.
I'm going to, Mr. Graham, I hope you don't mind. Of course, I drive out there a lot, and I tell you, the street, the landscaping, the trees are just not there. I find it really just almost desert-like, and I don't know what's going on with the landscaping, but my sense of what we were trying to do is create a place where there seemed to be like a boulevard, and that's why all of this extra time that we spent with the guys and the funeral home and on, but I know that this isn't in the budget, but I wondered if you could talk or think about this. I mean, the size of the street trees and how long it will take them to get to a place where it looks like a boulevard. I just think this is Highway 16, and it ought to be Highway 16 all the way through the city.
This next project is very similar to the Beatties Ford project. McKee Providence intersection, again, we've run into some unsuitable or bad soils, and so we're still evaluating the impact of that. But that's the main cause on this one, as being some budget risk. This next one has some budget risk. This is the building that we purchased at 5516 Central Avenue. As we've looked into the renovations of this building, there's significant deficiencies in some of the mechanical, electrical, and fire alarm systems. So we're still evaluating this and looking at other options, possibly for the use of this building. But that's one that we're evaluating. The other one.
Mr. Eggleston has a question.
One quick question on that one. We did purchase this building, right? And
yes.
So those strike me as things that would be part of the due diligence in purchasing a building, and it's not like digging up and finding bad soil, or doesn't, in my mind, it doesn't seem like digging and finding bad soil, and clearly we can't test every ounce of soil on a project, but if we're finding things that are mechanical inside the building, that seems like part of the due diligence we would have done in the purchasing of the building.
Yeah, I agree. I think we did find some things, but as we were going in and looking at some of the building code requirements, we had to take some of the walls down after we had purchased. We had to take some of the ceiling down to look at the HVAC, and we found that the HVAC system that's in there that's typically in other buildings is not typical in this building. It has the insulation inside the HVAC unit. It got wet, and now we have issues with the insulation being wet. So if we'd run air through that, particles would come out. And so that's one of the things that we really didn't see until we took the ceiling tiles down, until we really got into the building. So the next project is a CNIP project. It's in the Sunset Beatties Ford Comprehensive Neighborhood Improvement Program. This project is pedestrian improvements along Beatties Ford and Sunset. There's two improvements along Sunset Road and along Beatties Ford. In some recent conversations with NC.DOT, they have shared with us that they want us to extend and possibly increase the size of a pike crossing that is underneath Beatties Ford Road near Hornets Nest Park. And so we're in conversations with NC.DOT about this. We're also looking at other options to see if there's anything else that we can do to mitigate this.
And there was also some development options that were coming along on that portion. We had some rezoning or something, I remember. I wonder if this is really something that we could wait a little bit, have a little bit of time on as development occurs in that Trinity Road, and if there's a pipe at the Hornets Nest Park, just looking at that differently, and maybe it goes through the development process, or get some help from the development process.
This last project is the Montford Drive to Abbey Place street connection. This is one that has some budget risk due to some real estate or land acquisition costs. We have made an offer to the property owner. If all that works out, this one will come off the list. But again, I wanted to show, because some of the initial conversations, they were throwing out some numbers that were higher than what we were thinking, so.
Okay, this is one of those situations, and I'm going to say, Jennifer, when you go to Montford and Abbey, not everything is going to line up all the time. And if it gets to be a place where we're spending so much money on the right-of-way, I just have to wonder, you know, like just more signalization or more street signs or danger or whatever. I just wonder if how much, and it's $1.5 million, $2.5 million, and to do an additional $1 million. This is where Abbey is.
Yes, and that's why I think this one may come off. We have an appraisal, we're pretty comfortable with our appraisal. And if it comes in with our appraisal, we'll be within the budget, and it would come off that. But that is one of the options, that if the cost to acquire this land is so expensive or as much as the actual construction of the project, it might not make sense to do it.
Right. Mr. Driggs?
So you have 178 projects, $1.1 billion. 19 are complete. You're hoping to get some funds that you could apply towards these 8 situations. Looks to me like the 8 situations could amount to something like 15 million. Are we going to have the ability, as other projects complete, to basically digest this 15 million, or is this going to have to be a conversation topic as we come up with further capital planning?
Councilmember Driggs, I do believe that our first stop would be, can we digest it? As Jennifer was saying about the 19 projects that have been closed out, are there any savings there? So I don't, at this point, believe that there's going to be a big ask that we're coming back to council for.
Okay, thank you. I think the big news here is that there are no time bombs, right? I mean, we've been through a couple of surprises, so I appreciate the fact that this review has been done and we now have our arms around the status of these projects.
Any other questions? Mr. Eggleston?
Just to somewhat echo Mr. Driggs, this does feel like more information sooner than maybe we've gotten in the past, so it is much appreciated.
Any other questions? All right, Mr. Jones?
That's it.
That's it. So when's the next one of these coming up?
First Wednesday in March.
Okay, we'll be back in March.